Me either.
Now you know.
Right?
Okay.
Deb, are you all set? Okay. Ramona, can you gavel us in?
I can.
Thank you. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Welcome, visitors. I do need a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second that.
Hearing a motion in a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Trustee Majors, would you please read the district mission statement?
Certainly. Lakeland Joint School District's daily mission is to maximize student learning and ensure every student is growing academically, social, emotionally, and behaviorally every day in all environments.
Thank you. Trustee Grissom, would you please read the board's mission statement?
I will. The LJSD Board of Trustees is an elected body of community members committed to serving with honesty and integrity, nurturing a relationship of trust. We hear the voice of our constituents and represent their views of our district. We provide oversight of taxpayer funds through fiscal accountability. We govern through developing, upholding, and advancing policy for the purpose of forging an academic consensus. We create and empower well-rounded citizens while respecting parental authority. We promote individualism, nurture talents, encourage passions, and provide opportunities within the LJSD community.
Thank you for that. Moving on, Chrissy, do we have any patron input for agenda items?
We do not.
Great, thank you. Moving on to action items. We have the consent agenda, which consists of the minutes from the previous meetings and HR items. Would we like to break those apart?
I don't need to break them apart, but I am not everybody.
Well, does anybody have any questions or comments regarding any of the meeting minutes that were provided?
I did actually.
Okay.
And I apologize. I thought I had it up here. I do, but I have everything.
No worries.
There was just a couple of little corrections there. Just so page 2 under motion B HR items, it says a year in count. And I think it means a year end, and it's IN instead of END.
Which minutes?
Oh, I'm sorry, the regular school board minutes of 5/13/2021. And I think that, yep, that was it on that one. Just a minor thing.
Trustee Grissom, did you have any more comments on any of the other minutes?
I do not. Thank
Okay. Do we have any comments or questions on either the HR memo or any of the resignation letters presented?
I do, and last meeting made me think of this after we left, is that if I'm understanding this correctly, all of the hires that are listed, we're literally hiring these people as employees by only being presented with the HR memo. Is that correct or incorrect?
I'm not sure your question.
Well, so last, remember I was trying to figure out assistant principal versus principal's assistant. And then after we left, I thought, oh, so did we just hire an assistant principal without viewing a contract and knowing how much they were paid? And so when the memo was presented, it made me think, oh, so we've been hiring all these people without seeing contracts or rates of pay, or, I mean, we're just given the list, right? So that's all that made me think of that. So I wanted to clarify that this time
So,
around.
You will see the contracts when HR Director Cunningham presents them to the board, and then you will have that final approval on all those contracts.
Okay.
All of these people that are hired right now, Brooke is giving them a letter of intent, which tells them, this is our intent is to hire you, and then she shows them where they are on the pay matrix. So everybody that you've approved so far is on a matrix. There's either the district admin matrix, the classified matrix, or the certified matrix. After negotiations are done, then that matrix would be upgraded to, well, I assume upgraded, but it would be the new matrix would replace those. But right now, Brooke is just giving them a letter, all these people a letter of intent.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. I just needed clarification to make sure that.
Is that?
Okay. And actually, I have not placed anybody yet. I have to wait until I have an official transcript with them. And there is actually, I sent them a packet, an onboarding packet, and there's a checklist of items that they have to me in order for me to issue them a contract.
Okay.
If I don't have those items, I can't issue the contract. So yeah, you guys do have that final approval of the contract.
Okay, all right, thank you for the clarification. That was it. That was really my only question. The last conversation made me think of those things. That's it. I have no further questions, Madam Chair.
Okay, so let me see if I do understand this correctly. Because we get the contracts once at the beginning of the year to approve, but then when people are hired throughout the year, when do we receive their contracts when they are hired?
So typically we don't have too many mid-year ones, but
Okay,
when I did talk to you, we had talked about sending you, when I got your signature,
okay,
the list, I believe quarterly, for you to approve or on them throughout the year. So you were in the know continually.
right. What I had recalled was that with respect to the contracts, because the board's never officially been presented with contracts, we're presented with we talked all about this. I don't remember what you call it, but it's basically a spreadsheet of names and positions similar to the HR memo. And so you were going to be uploading the contracts, not each individual one, but the form one with the basic language that's presented. Is that still correct?
That is correct. That those are the state forms. We don't modify that language. We just input in the fields, basically the terms of the contract, name,
Right.
and stuff like that. And so then I called it my data source spreadsheet, because that's the spreadsheet that's uploaded to actually form the contract in Skyward in which the teacher signs.
Right. So I guess we just need some assurance that when and if someone should be hired throughout the year, respecting that we've seen the form contract, when we hire, say, an assistant principal, et cetera, we don't have any idea where they fall within the finances. We're not giving any information to support what we're paying them, et cetera. And we do need to have that information.
Absolutely, and you will definitely have that information.
Okay. All right. So that being said, with no more comments for minutes of the previous meeting or HR items, shall we approve the consent agenda? I would need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda as presented with the amendment to the 5/13/2021 regular school board meeting minutes as discussed.
I'll second that.
Having a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Moving on to report and presentation agenda, starting with staff reports from Principal Chris McDougall of Timberlake Junior High School.
Or you can do that. Okay. I need to click on the links and stuff.
So I'll let him introduce, but Harley McDougall, principal. That's your name.
Up there, they came to I work Chris McDougall, principal of Timberlake Junior High, soon to be Timberlake Middle School next year. This is Mr. Matty, my assistant. We are going to just show you a couple things that have happened this year with our little slideshow. So here we go, ladies and gents. So Timberlake Junior High, again, it's actually going to be interesting when we actually do change it to Timberlake Middle School. We're going to have to do a couple things in a lot of spots to make that happen, but we've got it already. So this year, actually, one of the things we've done, Mike and I actually use these little blue cards, and at the bottom it says Live, Laugh, Learn, Love. And so what we have, again, starting this year, wanted to make sure that we're doing all those things due to a crazy year, obviously with COVID and those type of things. But Blaine Johnson, who we all also call Big B, he and I took these words and wrote out our own quotes, because I always wanted to have my own quote, you know, where you get to like, I go to these little motivational things, I've always wanted to have our own quote. So those are actually a combo of Blaine Johnson and I's quotes for each of those words. So I'm not going to read them to you, you'll have them, but live, laugh, learn, and love, and that is kind of our theme and our principles that we have strived to accomplish all year long at Timberlake. We're just going to call them middle school now.
Yeah.
So our two main goals that we start off this year, number one, again, due to, and I hate to keep saying due to COVID, but that's just real.
Yeah.
And so due to that, to teach and give grace, compassion, and empathy, those were huge words for us. And we came into it with that. I made sure that staff was ready to understand that, and that creating a positive culture. You're going to see that a couple times in our slides. It's so important in our opinion. That's how everything unfolds from there, is having a positive culture, and our staff rose to the occasion. I'm so proud of them. I can't even begin to explain all the different things. And then the trenches, what we had to do. I was able to actually give a joy presentation. I created a presentation for Freeman School District because they needed some joy. So we were feeling the joy, and I gave this presentation that was actually really awesome and shared with staff and that as well. We also have the core project, our leadership, the random acts of kindness. We have social strength. And so those are other ways that we just help meet that number one goal. Number two, to big one, bridge the gap in student learning because of the deficit, the 6 months off of school. It's brutal. I mean, we saw it. We saw the effects coming into it from day one. So we went after that one like crazy with our MTSS teams and our breakout teams we've had. But again, always the safety, data, aligning curriculum, improving instruction, and again, closing that gap is so big for us. So, and again, there comes that the strength areas that we have seen this year is how strong our staff is. I literally wish they could all be here today so I could round applause them for what we overcame and did, and just hitting on that piece, the SEL, social emotional learning, for them too, was huge. So we had to really dig deep as a staff. Also, Mike and I this year, we really wanted to make a change with the learning gaps. And so and also just teaching and getting into the classroom and being in there as much as possible. And so we inspect what we expect, and so we use this. This is just a clip, and you can click on this later, but it's a Tiger Tribune that we started to develop, and it's a weekly. I send it out, the staff gets it, I share it with Dr. Meyer and Lisa, and it is, there's pieces on that that are just motivational, but they're also teach students on what we're looking for in the classroom to really make sure that teachers are seeing we're in there wanting to see the next level of education, because we need to close that gap. So that was a big piece for us. It was awesome. It went really well. And when you have time, you can check out the Tiger Tribune. And again, our staff, we are not a team because we work together. We are a team because we respect, trust, and care about each other. It is truly a little family at Timberlake Middle School, and anytime you can do it. You got it. Okay. This is pretty awesome. We were able to bring in this Clear Lake Elementary sixth graders, and there was a lot of reservation, and we were nervous. How are we going to do this? Well, it was awesome. We hired two phenomenal sixth grade teachers, Mrs. LaFontaine and Mrs. Buckowicz, and they rocked it. They took and added a whole dynamic to Timberlake that was exactly what we needed to see for this next phase coming in next year, where we're going to have all of them. So that has been a huge piece for us. Our sports, we just dominated in everything overall. And the best part is we were able to have every sport in this crazy COVID year, and we made it. We had, like, I was able to shoot this cool spray gun and clean off all the bleachers. That was really cool. So we were able to do everything we needed to meet all the CDC guidelines and all that, and had a very successful sporting year. So, and see, I told you, that culture and climate is just one of our passions. It just is what we do all the time. So, and I've gone along, we are actually being highlighted in the Idaho State Department of Education building capacity project. So we get to have a little article in this year. So that'll be kind of cool. This is by my favorite side, I have to say. When we are in the trenches and you have to look at, well, you get to look at data. And we start off first, we put ISETs at the top, and originally on this slide I had that we wouldn't have all our scores, and we still don't for everything. But right now, looking at what we have, we are above the state, and I'm not being mean to the district, but Little Timberlake Middle School is rocking it in comparison as far as percentages, overall math, ELA across the board. So, and then we use Irate this year, which is the program that's for math and reading. And we started off really slow because it was new to us. We didn't understand really what all Irate is and does and the capacity of it. So to start off, our first set of data you can see was fairly low, especially when we look at our 8th graders. They were just so it started off very low in all the. We then provided. We were like, okay, how do we do this, team? So we came together as a dynamic of building leadership team. We put together our MTSS team, and we said, how do we raise the bar? So we call it TNT. It's Top Notch Thursdays. So it's basically an incentive, and the kids actually made that decision that that's what they wanted to do. And it's a day where they can, at a certain point, kind of have some free time, have a computer lab, a movie room. We had a gym set up where, again, first one was spaced out for the most part. Real Life Ministries came in, brought in all these bouncy houses. I mean, it was awesome. So these kids knew how cool it was going to be, and then you can see the growth. The growth is huge. I mean, that just doesn't happen. So without the team, and that's that culture and climate we do here at Timberlake Middle School. So outside the box thinking, we also, with the help of Lisa Sexton, the BOAC training for reading is just been amazing. We've taken some kids to the next level. By the way, Lisa, you should see some of that stuff that just happened. We just got more data. It was awesome. Numbers are off the chart. They're like, what? So, and we rolled up our sleeves and brought together some of our pairs and did this small group intervention. So we've been able to take these kids that were, really low level, and because of our small group with the BOAC, and then 6-minute solutions, we have high school tutors coming in, helping our kids out, and they are just dominating that too. They've been wanting to come over for a class, so they actually get credit for it. So the high school kids have been awesome too. So that thinking outside the box has raised the bar big time. So, and then, like I said, the tutoring support, 100+ students have shown growth through the program. So, those are just fun numbers. So that's what I was my favorite side. And then what we want to continue to do is these 4 items, and I never like to read all these things, so we can read them, but we really, one of them I want to jump out on is the community next year, really getting when we are in more of a regular swing of things, really get out there in the community and bring them in, and always continuing to raise our SWD ISET scores. That's got us in that TSI scenario, so we really want to bridge that gap too. So that's our items we want. We had to give you a snapshot, kind of cool. Brian, I thought you'd appreciate this one where we have a nice view. First ever portable in the history of Lakeland School District. And we're adding all 6th grade. We're going to be probably 400 plus to start off. And again, that's an estimate, but there it is. That's what it's going to look like from the sky. Ladies and gentlemen, with the portable is going to be better looking than that because Brian's, we've dialed that thing in. It's going to be beautiful. And I'll send you all my equipment needs tomorrow. All right. There it is. Is that under 12 minutes?
Good job.
Very good.
Yes. How did you get that middle
I know,
one
I'm not
already?
clear.
I was like, wow, that was miraculous.
That we already etched that in. It's already. No. No, that's the genius of Blaine Johnson.
That's awesome.
So, all right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McDougall. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Yeah, you're
Thank
good.
you.
Okay, next we have Principal Jake Massey of Garwood Elementary.
Well, you guys, isn't it just great to hear Chris and Drew talk about anything?
Yeah.
I just feel good. At first, we were bickering, and I tried to challenge him to who could go first, but now I'm so glad I got to hear him go. I think we're all just a little bit happier. Well, thank you guys so much for allowing me to come and present tonight. I'm excited to be able to speak on behalf of Garwood Elementary. I've prepared a really simple presentation, so just know that I'm really open to any questions that you have about these things. All right. For those of you guys that don't know, I'm Jake Massey. I'm the principal at Garwood Elementary this year. I'm new to Garwood Elementary this year, and I'm so excited to be returning next year and we can stop talking about the turnover at Garwood. Who is not with me, Jesse Rohrback, who is our outstanding and very energetic principal assistant, and Cassie Martinez, our counselor, are also very instrumental in all of these things, even though they aren't here tonight. So there we go. To kick things off, I just want to say that the staff at Garwood Elementary is extremely solid. This group of people, and I've just learned so much from them. We have a school here at Garwood that is already extremely great. And so I wanted to share that first because that really is the tone in which we went into setting all of our building goals. And that's the tone in which we want to move forward. That we have greatness at Garwood. We want to honor that. And we're just going to, all of the fine tuning that we're doing is to make sure that we're improving our systems continuously. But jumping right into pandemic planning is what we did at the beginning of this year. And this team absolutely rose to the occasion. Through all of the changes, all of the ups and downs, they were there every step of the way and willing to do whatever we needed to do to support our students. So recognizing the greatness and fine-tuning systems has kind of been our theme for this year. Our mission at Garwood is that we inspire each other to achieve our personal best and build a community through compassion, creativity, and a mutual love of learning. And we sat down and translated that into our focus areas this year, which are making sure that the student experience at Garwood is positive. First and foremost, we want learners who love to be at school. That's so important to us. And then second to that is staff experience. And we'll get into this in a minute, but I really believe that happy teachers make the best classrooms. And then of course, academic and behavior support. So for the student experience, one of our challenges this year at Garwood, I've gone back and done the math in our student information system a couple of times. 29% of our population at Garwood is brand new to the school this year. we are seeing obviously a huge rate of growth in Coogan County, and Garwood, our zone, is no exception to that. And so whenever we put these things into place, a lot of it was to keep in mind that we are not only creating a positive experience to students who we've had, but we're also needing to be very purposeful about connecting new families and new students to Garwood and Lakeland School District. And so the way that we've done that is a few different things. We established a universal system. We call them Bear Bucks. They're the Garwood Grizzlies, and so they can earn a currency so that all students can access fun at Garwood. And this looks like spending money at a store, but instead of getting tangible things in return, for the most part, they purchase experiences. And I have some pictures here in just a moment. We realigned our character traits that we teach throughout all classrooms, and we celebrate them every month in assemblies, again, wrapping around that whole school community, making sure that our work in being good citizens is honored. And then one thing that I'm very excited about is we created a program this year called Recess Coaching. And so we transformed a position that we had, still on paper, they're new duties, but we refer to them as recess coaches to make sure that there are dedicated staff members on the playground who run different sports and large group games, and they are very literally in their actions coaches to the students to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to play and they learn sportsmanship along the way. So you can see in our Bear Bucks, here are a couple of examples. We do a monthly reward party. These students got to frost cookies in February. Students can pay for a tour of a fire truck. Timberlake Fire was great to come out and let the students spend quite a bit of time with them. In fact, just this afternoon, Deputy Clausen and Deputy Fontaine from the Sheriff's Department were out doing the same tour for a group of students in Garwood because they earned it. And if you save up for the top prize, you can pie me or Mrs. Warback in the face. Tomorrow at our assembly, we have 11 pies. And so, you know, while that's fun and we laugh at that, what I see there is all of those positive things. That just shows 50 Bear Bucks gets you a pie in the face, and all of the great things and all the hard work from each individual student along the way just speaks to what we've been able to grow in our students this year. And so it looks really funny and silly, but whenever this translates into classrooms and hallways and the playground, it's just reinforcing that great community aspect of Garwood. We also, so speaking to our assemblies, we try to make those as fun and engaging as possible. I've included some clips of what we call minute to win it games that we encourage our staff to play. And so we get real silly and goofy in front of the kids. If you know Mr. Von Till, that's really that's not something that you see very often, okay? And so we just really encourage that. And wanted to highlight here, we started a program called the Golden Dust Panel Board, which is given by our nightly custodians on a weekly basis to the classroom that shows the greatest responsibility in taking care of our school. And so again, we're just finding as many little ways as we possibly can to connect students to the community and teach them that even the little things that they do are a contribution. Okay. And here's one of our recess coaches, Coach Jamie, who took a parachute out on the playground and just had a blast with the kids. So they're learning lots of new games and skills. The number of office referrals from what is typically the most discipline heavy time of the day, lunch recess, is down dramatically because these kids are engaged and they're having fun. They're not fighting. They're not yelling at each other. They're being coached and they're learning good sportsmanship. So we're really proud of that. On the staff experience, Garwood, again, speaking to this amazing team, we have incredibly high retention in Garwood. It's important to us that Garwood is a great place to teach so that great teachers want to be there. And that really rings true for what the culture is right now. And so we've got a great staff. We've really turned our attention inward this year to focus on staff experience and elevating staff voice to have some ownership in the process. And really, it's been my intention to give them some control back after what has been years of lots of turnover in leadership. Okay. And so we did multiple surveys throughout the year just to measure how people were feeling about our culture. Some of the questions were very academic focused. projects. Like we feel like staff members have a voice in planning and an opportunity to collaborate, and those scores were very high. But I wanted to highlight two questions in particular. Our school reflects a true sense of community. 97% of the grown-ups at school, that's elementary schools, sorry, the adults at school, responded affirmatively to that. And then the next one, where people work here because they enjoy being here. They come to work every day engaged and enthusiastic, willing to take on the day because they know that they're supported, they know that they're cared for and treated like professionals. You can see that we try to get together often to play games as well as to talk about struggles and student issues that we need to work through together. We really believe that every staff member is part of the team. And so classified, certified, every staff member contributes to a team that is in some way involved in school life. Obviously, the core of what we're doing here in any school is to make sure that students are supported in learning academically. We recognize, and I will continue to advocate for, students cannot be totally ready to learn until we support them as learners first, right? And so that's why we talk about student experience and staff experience first, and then we can get to the meat of why we're here. We start this off with engaging in differentiated classrooms. This was really a challenge at the beginning of the year, starting at 6 feet apart in social distance. And over the course of the year, we were able to, of course, adapt to that scenario, but also get back to what we consider normal throughout it as well. We are refining our systems to ensure that students don't fall through the cracks. Mr. McDougall mentioned the MTSS team. We have a very active team at Garwood that their sole purpose is to make sure that we have students meeting their academic goals, reaching their full potential, and those who are falling short are getting the support that they need to continue learning. Okay. And of course, we believe that every student should have the opportunity to grow with grades. So I'm going to go through these things really quickly here. And I just gave you a quick overview. For reference, this is Irate. So this is the same assessment that Mr. McDougall talked about. And you can see here the breakdown. This is what I would call a formative assessment, meaning that we're progress monitoring along the way. It's not a final outcome. And you can see here that in the first 3 grades shown, in grade K, 1 and 2, students are meeting or exceeding their expected growth for the year in that measure. And then you can see in the upper grades, based on when this is pulled, they are right on track to be there by the end of the year. So we measure that throughout the year on an ongoing basis. On this side, this is the IRI, which you probably hear about quite a bit, the Idaho Reading Indicator. And you can just see the colors are pretty obvious. We want the green to grow and we want the red to shrink. Over the course of the year, we very systematically make sure that students are headed in that direction. One other way that we measure this along the way is we meet bi-weekly as grade level teams to talk about evidence of learning. We make sure that even outside of those more formal measures, we're really keeping close track of how students are performing in the classroom. I took a quick snapshot. The link is here for you to see, but I don't feel comfortable putting it up on the big screen today. So you can see the way that we go through and track the different assessments that we give throughout the year, and we color code it so that we can very visually make sure that students are making progress and that we're moving as a cohesive team. All right, so like I said, that was a really quick overview of a lot of the things that are happening in Garwood. But I think if I have time, I can welcome any questions that you have.
I don't have any questions, but I would attend Garwood.
Awesome. Awesome. Glad to hear that. Wonderful.
Agreed.
Yeah,
You're doing a great job.
You guys, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the student activity funds presented by CFO Brian Wallace.
Chairman Thompson, members of the board. I don't have much of a presentation, so Chair Thompson asked for these to be included. I asked Cindy Hackney, who has a longer history with the district than I have, because we haven't done this in the past. I have done it for other districts. Saying, have we ever submitted? She said, yeah, years ago, they did provide this monthly for the board. At some point, previous board asked not to have it, and we just asked them to practice.
Sure.
So anyway, it's, it's information assistance we ran for each month. The report's a little different for the student body accounts. If you look at them, we just sort of have the start balance for the month. If that activity or club had any revenues come in, any expenditures, and balance. And then often the principals look at this at the end of the year, they do true up. And activities that are in the negative, they will transfer funds from maybe the general ASP to cover that gap. But the information's there, and I'm here for any questions.
So can you bring up just pick one and maybe give us a little intro as far as like the account and the description? Is the 750 account the actual, is that what's
750 is the fund account that we're using to track.
right? So is that the student fund account, or what is the name or description of that?
I think that it's student body activity
Okay.
accounts. That's
Okay.
It's sort of what we do. So if we go to
Now you get a zoom. There it is.
Oh, there it is. That's a little better. So, I mean, the report shows we're looking at, we lumped all the schools together by month.
Mm-hmm.
So each account, you can see on the account here,
Mm-hmm.
that account number is so this is John Brown Elementary.
Mm-hmm.
And line, oops, sorry. So the student council account is this 604 here at the end.
Okay.
And so that'll be the same for every school.
Okay.
We use the same, that's sort of how we code it out by, it's called project in the system.
Yeah.
So, and it, really would just say that, for example, for, the general, they had this start balance, they didn't have any activity, and I guess they had $2.90, that was probably the interest they earned
Mm-hmm.
off the money, so their general account started at 614 and at 617, we didn't spend anything out of it, and it got so their interest. If you look at this donations account, we cut that down, but they've had so John Brown had a balance of this, they brought in, there's a few dollars that came in, some expenditures out of that account, and they have the remaining and then the balance. So it's just sort of a simple report. It doesn't get into a lot of details, but that's
Right.
typical. This is actually the report that they will send to the assistant treasurers. We'll send to Cindy.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, she can also run it in the system if she needs to.
So at the very top of the report, there's some column headings like posted SBAA, the receipts, requests, blah, blah, blah. What is the SBAA?
That is the student body activity
Okay.
account. That's sort of a Skyward term. They call it SBAA.
Okay.
They actually do in the system, they do accounting in sort of a pared down version
Mm-hmm.
of the full version of Skyward that we use. It's a little easier for the assistant treasurers who don't get in the weeds quite as much as we also do admin assistants and usually accounting. So Skyward developed a sort of it doesn't have all the functionality, but it's a little simpler for them to use, easier to balance to for the level that they're doing. It's not quite as complex as obviously the finances of the district.
Mm-hmm. So I know it's fairly self-explanatory, but can you just walk us through, so we have the beginning balance and then the cash receipts, cash requests, so those are
So the check
bills,
request would be,
warrants, what are?
yeah, the check would be a warrant.
Okay,
Yeah, so should be an encumbrance. If we had a journal entry,
mhm,
so that's something where, as opposed to, it went through the system, so let's say they did a, a purchase order, and then that would encumber it as a check request, but then that check clears and they pay through the invoice, then that'll sort of be an automatic, like in the system that it would hit. If they did a transaction where they did a manual adjustment,
mhm,
that's what a journal entry is.
right,
So the interest was, we looked at the bank statement and Cindy went and did that journal entry, as opposed to the system generating the credit or the debit.
and then what would the remaining, the PO and the remaining?
If they had a
amount?
PO, let's say they had a PO for $500 and
Mhm.
half of it came, they paid 200, then
The open
if
balance.
it was liquidated only partially, it would remain balance.
Okay.
Generally, for most of these things, that we're not going to see very much of that.
Yep.
That happens more at the district level. We'll definitely have, well, for example, let's say the PO for the modulars,
Mhm,
we issue that big PO, and they'll, we'll pay progress payments as the project moves along, and that would be, remaining on that PO.
right, right. Yeah. So I guess my other question would be, in just looking at it, is this all student generated funds of some sort? I mean, like, I don't know, what every school is doing, but obviously the vending machines, school store, all those types of things. Because I think the reason the report was asked to is because, I don't know why the other board quit doing it, but by statute, it's required for the board to have this student activity funds tracked and reported. So would you say that all of these in this report, I mean, I don't know what the conversation was, so I don't know if all of these actually represent just those activity funds by the students, or is this just based on what the Skyward puts the student body activity account?
Well, we were the ones who, created, decided to call it, school store or library or donation.
Okay.
That was sort of our decision
Mhm.
in setting up the system.
Sure.
It gets more complex at the high school level. They have more activities and more clubs.
Mhm.
So generally with student body activity accounts, for the most part, each club and activity is sort of like if you want to think of its own mini fund. So if a donation came to the chess club, it should stay in the chess club. It shouldn't move around.
Right.
Now, let's say there are some times where a school may get a small grant. So as opposed to us handling it at the district level, we'll say, that's $1,000 grant or $500 grant. Why don't you hand it at the building level, because they're the really ones who are doing it, and so that might go in your general ASD for some activities. But you really want, that if the football team did the fundraiser, then we have the football team line, and it stays with that activity. As a general rule, with I used to call it the sort of a Washington term for their ASD accounts, but this is the same thing in Idaho. It's sort of the CARS. All student body activity accounts should be CARS. It should be cultural, athletic, recreational, or social, and should be focused on the kids. So you shouldn't be buying, let's say, for example, they did a fundraiser for, the football team. It shouldn't necessarily go for a conference for the coaches who do professional development. It should go, the district sort of should be paying for that, unless someone specifically donated money for that purpose, then it'd be okay. But, so you really try to stay with the intent of the dollars and support those activities. So like if FFA did a fundraiser and Jackie ran at the Timberlake, then those funds are gonna stay there. So some of these balances, it might have been a fundraiser or a balance actually from years ago. They just haven't decided what to spend it on, or maybe they're gonna hopefully get something else and add. And so we carry them over from year to year. And that's really sort of driven by the principal, the teachers, and the students making those decisions.
So I have another question. So for instance, donations. So are there, if somebody gives a donation and they just say, yeah, I'm just going to donate to the school, here, give it to the kids, it would just be lumped in there. But what if they give a donation and say, you know, I want $100 of this to go to the football team and $100 to go to, you know, whatever student council activity. In that instance, are the funds then targeted for only those things, like they're restricted to those accounts in which the
Right.
donate?
Maybe put 100 here and 100.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And I say this to anybody who donates with a caveat, is that, you know, our intent is to honor the intent of the donation.
Sure.
But once it becomes district money, it is district money.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so someone may, I don't know, let's say they had a intent that they wanted a bench project and put the bench in, and eventually that bench had to go. I don't know. Well, I
Right.
think sometimes some of that stuff happens with the donation.
Yeah. Right. But we would never take the money that the students raise for a particular project and use it on another
No,
project.
they're really good about that.
Right. Yeah.
And, you know, this is all managed at the, and we have, you know, procedures that are sort of guidelines that the principals and the clubs follow.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's definitely the intent. You know, if the wrestling team, you know, did the fundraising for them, then they'll do the wrestling team. Now, sometimes we'll do fundraising and it will be for, you know, a charitable event where they're doing, I don't know, fill the bus with food, or they get some cash donations, and that's really, then they do the fundraising and it goes right out the door for,
Right.
you know, the activity or the charity they were supporting. So,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, we really try to do that, and we really try to say if it's, for example, if it's a booster fundraiser,
Mm-hmm.
well, then it doesn't go through here.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I always tell them follow the money. If the boosters are doing it, it's going to their bank account, then we may be coordinating with them, but it's not our fundraiser because it didn't go through us. The moment we deposit it, then it's our fundraiser, and we have to take ownership and that responsibility to make sure it goes in the right spot.
Right, right, yeah. Yeah, and the statute's very clear, and I think that's all, I mean, can't speak for the whole board, but I think that was the board's intention, was that just trying to understand how we meet the statute obligation, you know, to make sure our policies are in line and that we understand what the activity funds are that we're supposed to be being accountable for. So I appreciate the.
Yeah, and it depends. Some and we've since our levy supported a little bit more of our athletics and activities, some of the fundraising's gone down in our district.
Mm-hmm.
When I was at Coeur d'Alene, I mean, there were some significant dollars. I mean, there's still quite a bit of dollars that come through. The principals do a really good job of managing that. But like Coeur d'Alene High, I mean, we're talking.
Right.
They were flying the football team down to California. And that was all donations from parents saying we wanted to go play, you know, California. It was a lot of money.
Right, right. Okay, I think, I mean, I have other questions. We could probably answer those in emails, like the, you know, the other little pieces of the puzzle, receipts from the vending machines located on the property, you know, sales. I assume the sales, because I saw a yearbook in there. So I assume that's just the category there.
Right. And so a lot of times with the vending sales we do, that we sort of track that, but eventually the principal will distribute the vending sales to various clubs, depending on, let's say that year the volleyball team needed volleyball time. So they might say, well, this year I'm going to sort of dedicate a little bit more to the volleyball team because last year I got out. So the vending sale sometimes is
Right.
some accounts are, we really don't spend much unless you're buying,
Mhm.
the fees to the vendor.
Okay, I guess we could ask for more detail if we need it. So I'm thinking like one of the schools, the high school up there that has the coffee bar.
Yeah, mad coffee.
Yeah, that the kids do the coffee
Yeah,
and
we
things
had
like
coffee
that.
at Timberlake,
Mhm.
and I think.
Yeah,
all-
no,
and-
that's the one too.
Yeah, they have, and I think, and the high school did have. Oh, not
I
anymore,
don't have it with-
not this year, okay. Yeah, they might have. I know my daughter used to get the Red Bulls.
Yeah.
That's what
Okay, I have no further questions, Madam Chair.
Brian, I do have a couple of questions. One being, I noticed on the elementary schools, they all appear to have Chromebook damage accounts. So are the Chromebooks for the schools handled at the school level and not at the district level?
No, we have that account because they collect the initial dollars at the school. And then
Okay,
we transfer it to the district. So we do have a main, but we had to have an account at each level, so at least they had a place to put it for that transition.
okay. And then like at the junior high, senior high level, all the different organizations and whatnots at the end of the year, does that money then carry over for the next year for that specific sport or organization? Or does it go to some sort of general fund and then get redivvied? How does that work?
Yeah, that will carry over.
Okay.
If a certain activity gets in the red, then generally the general ASB or the vending or the gates or one of the more generic fundraising accounts will have to cover that gap. We try to avoid that. But yes, if they have a positive balance, it rolls over to the next year for that specific activity.
Okay, okay, that sounds good. All right, well, those were just my two questions from what I saw. And then if we could start getting these on a regular basis, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, we have it on our monthly to-do list.
Perfect, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you. Yep, thank you.
Brian. Okay, next. Right, next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
Okay, it's really brief today. Just a couple of things. I wanted to make sure and do some follow-up to the ISBA training that we had. And I went back through my notes want to make sure we had looped around our feedback. So one of the questions that came up and that the board wanted to follow through was how policies are working in the district after we put them into place. So in a past at the board level, and then Trustee Grissom said, I'd love to hear back how are they working and get some feedback. So we created a system. I just discussed it with the principals and, how could we ask how it worked in the if it affected teachers or parents or students or how that would be. So we created, we're going to do it on a monthly basis. And we're going to take the spreadsheet that Chrissy develops. It has all of the board that all year long, what board policies have been passed. And then any new ones after every board meeting, she highlights in bright blue and then sends it out. So after every board meeting, she has follow-up that she does. And then we're going to take those and put them on the K-12 admin meeting. So once a month, they'll sit down and we'll have work time, go through here, and we'll say, this is the feedback we need. And if we'll say, does it affect staff? We want to get staff feedback. It affects students, parents, whatever group, curriculum, whatever group it may affect, we want to get feedback. Then we're going to have a note-taking form so we can get you feedback from the people that are actually influenced by the policy. And then we'll bring that, I'll send that back to you once a month in a board update after I get that. So I'm going to do it on a monthly, I think monthly basis will be enough. And then if you feel like it needs to be reported out at the board meeting, then you can just let me know after I give you the feedback and board update. You'll say, this information should be public or not. You can just decide after we do that.
Perfect.
So that's one thing we're gonna do. The other thing is we're gonna bring awareness to the curriculum approval process and typing procedures. So something was new information. We did share that with the K-12 team. We did some training. I brought up the actual, I downloaded the code that, the code that we talked through about board governance of schools and to provide required pupils, the students, to be provided with suitable textbooks and supplies, and textbook selections may upon curricular materials adoptions as provided for 33.512A, which we're going to be going into soon with the math adoption. So this is all coming, open and to light. The other thing that I thought was, it was new information for every single one of us except for the board, but it was new information that I just wanted to clarify for the public, is that it was new information for all of the administrators, that curriculum materials is defined as all textbooks and supplemental materials, which had been the precedent in this district prior. The instructional materials also includes media such as software, audiovisual media, and internet resources. So it was just a bigger expansion than what we that we knew. So we made sure, I wanted to let the board know we followed through with the K-12 admin team training and have the new system that we have developed, which I shared with the board, where and we did that last time with how the 2 weeks go, and it goes to the board, and then there needs to be 2 weeks for them to review it before it can be adopted. So we've talked about the new timeline, and all of that will be presented when we have the when Ms. Sexton and Dr. Pasley presents to you on the curriculum next week. They will go through, this is the process that everyone, so we talked about this year. What if you need something for next year, what's the timeline to get adopted before we go to get this? For purchase orders, we're already past the purchase order time. It has to wait till July 1 now. We cannot order, we don't order anything else at this point. And then next year, what's the timeline? So the board has time to review that, public has chance for input, and then there's a longer turnaround. People can't just put a PO and expect that it's going to get approved within 48 hours. That's not how it's going to work anymore. So we went through these definitions, made sure everyone was on board. So the principles are really clear now of this process. We have a flow chart that we are creating. I don't know if it's done yet, but we have a flow chart that the principles we talked about. We kind of did some whiteboard stuff to make sure where does this go, where does that go, and so that will all be presented to the board, so you see exactly what the principals and the bookkeepers will see as far as the timeline. So I just wanted to let you know about that, follow up with those things. Any questions on those pieces?
You did say the board was already aware, because I remember I actually brought that up a couple of times, but I don't know. I guess maybe the board before us, or I don't know how it got out of
Well,
whack.
it wasn't in my old district either, that I was in for 23 years. So I'm not sure if this was just updated with the internet resources. The internet isn't that old. I don't know if that's the breakdown, or if it's just, we've talked about this before, precedents set in districts and people get into a protocol of how they, system of how they do things. And it's just, according to people I've talked to in the district that have been here for 30 years, this is just how it's always been. And it actually is what I was accustomed to in my prior district and several other superintendents I've talked to. So I think it just is something, whether it was right or wrong, it just was new information, and we were just happy. Lisa and I were just happy that now we're all on the same page, and we and you definitely have brought it up several times before. But there was a difference in the minds of the district administrators of textbook and curriculum versus supplemental. In our world, there was a delineation between the two.
Right.
But then after going through the board training with the board on May 11th, we took time to unpack it and discuss it more. It wasn't like we were in a rush or in a public board meeting like we've been, and it really was unpacked and discussed with ISBAs, was there as well, and everybody was on the same page, so.
Yep.
I guess I'm just letting anybody in the public knows that maybe watching this, that we necessarily maybe didn't do it right up to this point. But now we're all on the same page. We've got a new system in place, and we will be following this now. We have a new way to move forward that we'll be following this letter of the law.
Yep.
So I just think it's important that everybody knows.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think with the creation of the board calendar and getting the dates set and everything, I think the whole process will flow better.
That's a great idea. We need to put that on our follow-up, is that when it goes to the board and then 2 weeks later that they will have to ask questions, they can have people come that next session. So we put them, somebody who wants that curriculum may have to come and talk about it with the board. That may come to the next meeting. So those will be good that it's on the calendar with the board as well. Yeah. And then also per the ISB, I just wanted to double verify. And again, Board Chair Thompson is in charge of agenda planning, but something that that Ms. Sexton and I thought was really important. ISBA suggested on every board meeting is policy, which we do have, personnel, which we pretty much have had every time. Either they're presenting or there's something to talk about. HR is every time, but finance is all the first meeting because the second meeting is optional. So finance is always the first meeting. And then safety, we have not been, and I think because of everything that's happened, we would really like to have that as a first meeting standing agenda item that Ms. Sexton and I in her district safety task force team met last night. They would love to have that on the agenda, and that was an ISBA suggestion. So I'm hoping that would be okay with the board to put that on. And then the other suggestion that ISBA had that we had sort of talked about, but it isn't, we don't do it on the public every time, is the CIP, the Continuous Improvement Plan. That's the goals that the board has for our Continuous Improvement Plan. And now by law, they put it all together with the literacy and the CCR, they're all going to be in one document. So I just wanted to bring this up again, that it would be great moving after we get through the school year and moving forward, if we could, we were hoping to have safety on June 10th. And then when we start our new CIP, have that on every month as well. If that, meets board chair approval from board chair Thompson, but anyway. Did you have thoughts about that? Or you don't have to say it right now. I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No, I'm sorry. I yawned and I didn't hear the last part of your statement, so I apologize for that. But no, I have no problem incorporating safety and the CIP plan onto the agenda at all. I think that would be incredibly beneficial for the board and for the public to be continuously aware of what's transpiring.
Okay, so that'd be great. And Ms. Sexton did talk to the district safety task force team last night, and there could, on the board's request, they could even do anything you're interested in hearing about as well, like just based on what you would like to hear. So that is that. And board workshops, I again keep doing this every time just because I want to get some dates on the book, and I'm not trying to be a broken record or bug you, but because I know everyone's busy. But our curriculum workshop coming up and on June 1st, and then really want to make sure we get a date scheduled for our next steps in the facility levy planning, reminding the public that plant facility levy expires in 2022. There's several plan A, B, C, and D that I have in my mind, but I would love to kind of give some ideas to the board and then have a discussion on what the board, because it is a big deal. This is a big deal. It's 1.146 million per year. In our 5 years expiring in 2022. We did pass an instructional levy by 42 votes. And so I have some thoughts, and I'm sure the board each has some thoughts as well as how we can proceed with what some of those needs are with plant facility levy, but still really respecting the tax culture and climate and where we are as a community. So I would love to get that on the books and have that discussion before we get too far deep into the summer would be my hope, like that we can, before we, yeah. Anyway, I'd love to schedule that. One thing we also talked about, and Chrissy and I talked about doing a board book training. Anyone who's interested to have some set time because there's a lot of power in that and we just don't know. There's some training videos and some things that Chrissy has figured out. So we'd love to set a time for that. That's not front burner stuff. That really could be back burner and only people who are interested in it. It's just that, you know, Trustee Grissom did put it as a suggestion, so I don't want to fall through the cracks if people are still interested. And then Trustee Grissom, I'm gonna let her bring this up. She would maybe want to have an IDB package proposal, which is the next slide for her to discuss. We had what we're hoping is our final meeting on Monday. It's been, I just want to let you know, this is our 5th year of doing it. It's been very pleasant. It was a very peaceful process. It was great to have Trustee Grissom on. She's brand new with it, but she added a lot. Obviously, people who know her know she knows a lot about statute. So she brought a lot to the table that way. And we have a preliminary package and some information I linked in you can look at later. Just so the board knows, and if anyone in the public is interested, just because the IBB team approves the package, so that's the first step. So the interest-based bargaining team has met for several weeks in a row. We have a preliminary package. It goes to the LEA, which is the Lakeland Education Association. They go to their membership and they have to ratify, which is another word for kind of approve, but they have their whole process with little slips of paper, I think, or I don't know exactly how they do it, but they have to ratify that. They're planning on meeting next week with their membership. And then after that point, it goes to the board for approval. And so Trustee Grissom has some suggestions for next steps.
So we did go through everything. I don't have that link for the summary. And HR Director Cunningham and Mr. Wallace.
Would you like me to bring it up?
Yeah, that would be great. Yep. Finalized yesterday this tentative agreement. And I have all of these links in an email. So everybody has access to them anyways, but I figured I would put them all in one spot so everybody could click on the link, read the document, ask the questions. And then my idea was to add it to the June 1 meeting that we were going to have for open discussion, because obviously we can't be discussing it through email or what have you. But we did get through the whole document, so all of the updates are on the document. These are the complete agreements that the team came to collectively. Also, in the links that I'll be sending you is the IBB team agenda, I believe. And the reason I think that's important is because it lays out how the team went by, if you looked at the rules and the standards, and how the team looked at each brainstorm and then came to a consensus that this is how was equitable for everybody, or this is what we agreed on. And there were some, a lot of thumbs ups. There were some neutrals where people, either way, but there was a lot of changes. The other thing I think is important in looking over the tentative agreement, which are the items that were addressed during the meeting that would be updated on the negotiated agreement, is also CFO Wallace's projections, and I forget what he actually called that document. I think that's on the slide.
The revenue projections?
I believe so. Dr. Meyer, can you look on your, yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So I have both of those things that Trustee Grissom just, both of those are linked into there for the board.
Yeah. So CFO Wallace presented this to the team, and this is based upon the most current as of Monday information from the state and how the funds will be distributed to the district for the salary-based apportionment and some of the other things. So if you have any questions about that, he laid it out fairly clearly about what we were getting and where we are going, we think. And of course, they've changed everything based on ADA versus just enrollment numbers. The very last column on the lower right-hand side of that revenue sheet that CFO Wallace gave us is he shows, after he puts all of those numbers together, what that lower left or lower right grid is, sorry, my brain quit on me, is what the district, so the 1% increase was the 189.66. The block right next to it, the 212.193 balance, was the quote sort of affordability. You know, if we did a net neutral budget type swap. In the end, the thumbs up ended up with a 1.25% raise, which was across the board, which was a matter of a $20,000 difference or so. But you'll be able to look at all those numbers. It sort of all evens out in the end. And then you can ask questions. And then the negotiated agreement documentation itself did have some additions. There was one that I was neutral on myself, was the implementation of the stipends for the SOS leaders, I guess. The leadership. But anyways, there's a lot in there, and there's a lot to digest, but it's sort of like Dr. Meyer said, the LEA takes it, they ratify it, basically they approve, the board looks at it, we ratify it, do we approve? If not, everybody's got to come back and make changes, then we go forward. I will remind the board that July 1 is our cutoff date, that we have to have all of the contracts to the state. So before then, all this information has to be, written in stone, and then Director Cunningham has to, fill in all of those proposals, get them to whomever we're hiring. They have to get back, and then it all has. So there's a lot that needs to be done in about 30 days with the major holiday and the end of school. So I would encourage the board, when I send the links, to go through it and ask Dr. Meyer or whomever you have questions or need clarification on what the agreement actually was.
And these, just to point out the turquoise, we have trying to follow the same format that the board does. If new information is highlighted and anything struck out, that's changes where she's talking about different things this year that we all did the voting on the thumbs up. This would be like, this is new information. If it's in turquoise. So that you can quickly go to what's updated in there.
Yep. And this particular area that Dr. Meyer is showing, the advanced professional, this was a very long, lengthy conversation, which I have a lot of information on. So you know what, I will add that to the email also, so you can read the statute, you can read the intent of the original bill, and then that might raise more questions, I don't know that, but I will share that information with you also, so maybe it'll bring some clarification.
So am I to understand, if we have questions upon reviewing, we need to email Dr. Meyer?
Or Trustee Grissom, I would suggest, you can certainly call and ask me. I would suggest you start with Trustee Grissom, not because I'm trying to get out of it, it's because she's your representative. So as a board of individual board members, she's representing, she can't represent everybody, which she made clear several times, but she is your representative on the committee, on the team. So she would be somebody to contact to see, well, why is this happening, or why the team? But then you certainly could reach out to me as well.
Okay. And then if she doesn't give me the answer I like, what do I do? I'm just curious.
This is new territory, because they're really, I mean, to be honest, and Ms. Sexton kind of backed this up for the last so many years, the board pretty much just, whoever the board representative was on it, they kind of made the decisions according to this. And I'm not saying it's right, I'm just telling you what's happened historically. The precedent in this district has been that person, that board representative on the team, basically made all the decisions. And if they had questions, they'd go back and ask the board, so that by the time it got approved, when it came back to, if the association ratified it, it was like a done deal at the board level. So I think that's why Trustee Grissom's wanting to make sure everyone reads and asks for questions ahead of time, because she sort of is emphasizing that if you don't agree with the way she's voted and come to this bottom line where the whole team, because it's interest-based bargaining, we're all one big team, then you should probably be talking to her now before, and so she can make changes as time is of the essence, and she wants to make sure she's doing the right thing in the interest of the board, but she really was, as she was, in my opinion, that she was being this representative on the team. Does that make sense, Board Chair Thompson?
Yes and no. I mean, if I have a question on something, say, and I bring it to her, what I heard you just say is that she would make the changes, but I don't know that she can do that if everybody has to give a thumbsy uppy on it.
Yeah, no, she can't make the changes, but she will take, if you have something that you can't live with, again, you're one board member, so she would.
Correct.
You would probably need to reach out to all the other 4 board members and say, how do you feel about this? And if she felt like that everybody was against it or the majority was against it, then she would probably tell me, can you get the IDB team back together? Because I think that the board is going to have a problem with this piece that we put in. I think we need to get the team back together and re-talk about it.
Okay.
And I've seen that happen in my years of experience doing this back in, I think, 2006 we started or something, I think. I can't remember the year we started in my last district. There was times when that the board member that was the rep would go individually. You can legally ask individual board members, how do you feel? Do you have any questions? And if there was a consensus like, oh my, nobody likes this SOS thing, and there was 3 of my other board members that are like, I don't like this, then that rep would say, we need to go back to IDB team to discuss this.
Right. Yeah, we would definitely work together to, if I didn't know the answer, so to speak, we would find the answer through whomever it might be, their expertise. And then if we did, if there was stuff that the board just felt like was out of the ballpark or unacceptable, what have you, we would do just that. Like Dr. Meyer said, there would be consensus and we'd have to go back and discuss it. So that's why I'm asking everybody to please review all of it and ask now, even if you don't understand, and I'll try and explain it as best I can. But
Sounds great. Thank you.
So, all right, thank you so much.
Oh, darn it. Oh, there we are. Okay. Had a little technical difficulty. I apologize. Thank you for that, Dr. Meyer. Moving on to the action items. The first action item is the ISBA agreement for schools, Idaho School District, Idaho School District School Zone Equalization. We did discuss this at our last meeting and we did agree to move forward with the ISBA. However, I believe it was brought, I guess the contract has been brought for approval by the board. So, does anyone have any questions or comments about the ISBA agreement?
Well, I think with the information that has recently come about, this would be the rezoning for the land swap.
No, the census.
Census.
This is the census one.
Oh, gotcha. Okay,
The other one is down in the park.
gotcha. So this doesn't have anything to do with that. Okay, great. I don't have any questions.
I do not. I don't have any questions either.
Okay, then I would need a motion to either accept or deny the ISBA agreement for Idaho School District School Zone Equalization.
I'll move that we approve the ISBA agreement for Idaho School District School Zone Equalization as presented by June 1.
I'll second that.
Hearing a motion in a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Okay, at the last meeting, we did approve to send out certified contract letters June 1st with a return, I believe, of June 10th. We do need to Chrissy, do we need to amend that or do we just make a new one?
You know, trustee could state in the motion that there was a previous approval of a different date and we need to amend due to time constraints.
Okay. And is Brooke, or is the HR director still in the room?
Yeah, she's here.
Okay, Brooke, are those dates sufficient? Do you want to bump them by 5 to give you more time? Because I don't know where everything stands.
I'm hopeful that the board it's gonna get ratified and the board is gonna approve that on June 10th. And so, if the board doesn't approve it, then that night we will have to extend out, but it's adequate time for me to get those ready, as long as, you know, there aren't any changes to the percentage that's been proposed.
Okay. So then do you want to keep the dates as they are on the agenda, which is June 11th to be returned by June 21st? Is that sufficient?
Yes, I would like to be optimistic.
Okay. All right, then I need a motion to modify the certified contract letters dates to June 11, from June 1st through June 10th to June 11th, 2021, to be returned by June 21, 2021. Well, does that sound appropriate, Chrissy?
That will work.
Okay, thank you.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Hearing a motion in a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Next item is the Lakeland High School Senior Drug-Free Grad Night Bus Lease.
Do I present?
We just have to see that question.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Or just stand up. You don't have to stand.
Just tell me. I feel really loud, I can Google too, so.
Mr. Munier is also a teacher
Yeah.
at Lakeland High School, and he has, and his wife, their Lisa Munier, is teaches at Lakeland Middle School as well, Spanish.
Good deal.
Nice.
We're part of this community.
That's awesome.
Perfect. So, I didn't know I was gonna do this, but I will.
But they just need to, this is the
Okay.
first time they've done it,
Perfect. So
Because we
it's
had
first time I
COVID.
did it too.
and they had COVID and they didn't do it before,
Yeah.
so they're just gonna,
So let me explain to you what's happening.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So it's an all-night grad, like these young people graduating on June 9th, and we have an all-night play. We have, how much money have we raised? Close to 30,000, some crazy amount of money.
Wow.
And all this is going back to the kids.
Wow,
Awesome.
that's
Yeah.
great.
So it's, we're gonna have a really fun night. We have prizes and all kinds of stuff. The triple play night is actually a big part of it. It's $14,000 just to reserve that.
Mhm.
Anyway, we need buses to get there.
Sure.
We don't want these kids to drive themselves to and
No,
from.
no.
So it's a drug-free, is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, drug-free, alcohol-free. We don't want anybody to be involved in that stuff, obviously. And so we want to make sure that we're taking care of these young people to, right after they graduate, they're gonna meet us at the school at 9:30, and we're gonna be going to have some fun all night. And then, big bus, 4 buses. I think. Four buses. And we're actually gonna pay the bus drivers. a full donation.
Yay.
Great.
Because they're gonna turn around and come back and do the rest.
Sure.
Right.
Friday or Thursday.
Yeah,
sweet.
that's great. That's super.
So I have any questions? I don't know if it's clear.
Are you guys both doing it the same night? I'm guessing, yes.
I don't
The
know.
Timberlake and the Lakeland?
I
No,
don't
because
know.
they're different
Gotcha.
graduation.
Yep,
nights.
yep. I forgot about that. Awesome. Very
Yeah.
cool.
So I think traditionally it's been like we pay the district $2.
Like $1 or
$1, something
something.
like that, and then, but we're donating the bus drivers, I believe $100 per bus driver, just to help us. But say thank you.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a $2 lease.
Okay.
Big money.
Big
Yeah.
money, so.
Yeah, so you're-
Yeah.
Is that it? Or you-
Well, just be, if you have any questions, it sounds like.
I don't have any questions. I'm fine.
I'll make a motion to approve the Lakeland High School Senior Drug-Free Grad Night bus lease.
I'll second that.
Hearing a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Following that, we have the Timberlake High School Senior Drug-Free Grad Night bus lease. Does anybody have any questions or anything on that one?
I do not.
Nope, I don't either.
Alrighty then. I'll entertain a motion regarding this bus lease.
I'll move that we approve the Timberlake High School Senior Drug-Free Grad Night bus lease as presented.
I'll second that.
Bring a motion in a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Next is the speech language pathologist assistant job description. Cannot wait to get my braces off. Okay. Dr. Meyer, would you like to speak to this, or is interim special director there?
She's not, but we did talk about, we have had the speech language pathologist position open. We have one SLP that has a caseload of, like, the highest we have right now of like 92. It's a shortage throughout the entire nation. We're not turning out, she's called local universities, programs that offer this, the SLPs, and we just have 0 applicants and it has been open. So she brought it to the district leadership team and said, hey, what if we do an assistant? Because we do already have the ability to do this and somebody that does this. So they can help, and the IEPs are written this way, that will help. And we'll still keep the SLP position open, but we'd really like to get this posted, and hopefully this will recruit and retain somebody to help in this area. We desperately need help in the district in this area.
Where did this job description come from?
She called around to all surrounding districts, and several districts are using this position. So she got one that she liked, and then she read it and made some changes, submitted it to HR Cunningham, Director Cunningham, and then she ran it by people that are doing this SLP to make sure it sounded right, and then she's bringing it to the board.
Okay. I'm a little confused by some of the qualifications because they actually seem more like job responsibilities. So I don't know that they are qualifications. So I guess this is a little concerning.
So I see what you're saying. So do you want Brooke to break it up into qualifications and specifically what it needs to be endorsed or qualified?
Yes.
In the job descriptions? Got it.
To me, the qualifications are what the person needs to, the measures the person needs to have to attain the job. And then if we want to do, what the job requirements are, that's totally fine. But the way it is right now, I'm not comfortable saying, yeah, this is great, let's get this published.
Yeah, perfect. We will bring that back to the board.
Okay. Does anybody else have any input on it?
I did. I'm trying to bring it up here. Here we go. And I agree with you sort of looking through it, but the other thing that I don't know if there's an organization, and of course they're just recommendations, but it's the American Speech Language Hearing Association. And I know that I guess, having a hard time filling this. But there's some ratios that they suggest that, you know, an assistant, only so many assistants to, you know, as far as a supervisor only supervises so many, and there's some other language recommendations about admin support, you know, what is outside of an SPLA's responsibility and what it, I'm just concerned, I don't want us to hire this assistant who then becomes the speech language pathologist.
Trustee, Board Chair Thompson.
Yeah.
Kelsey Badger is on Zoom and she just texted in. So I'd like to bring her up so she'll better be able to answer the questions than I am.
Okay.
Okay, 1 second, I'm just trying to figure out which Zoom person she is.
I hear what you're saying, Trustee Grissom.
Right.
Yeah, sometimes if you hire somebody because you can't get it's just that we've had it open for so long and there's been no SLPs that have applied. So we're desperate. The kids need help and it's hard for somebody to cover 92 kids on a caseload.
Right.
So.
Is there someone we could contract with? Some of these.
Yes. I.
Sorry.
Can
Sorry, my dogs are barking.
okay. All right. So would you be able? I know we can reconfigure. I can see what Board Chair Thompson is talking about, the job description. We can do that. But, could you maybe say a little bit of the history of it to kind of get context for the board?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a little bit of a difference, I think, how it was initially explained. So the SLPA, the assistant, actually has to have either a bachelor's or go through a program for speech and language pathology. To be a speech and language pathologist, to work in the schools, you have to have a master program and go through the communication. So this is like someone that didn't want to go through the master's, but still wants to work in the schools, working for our SLPs, working with the language and the articulation goals. So it's a little bit different than just like a para. That's why it's broken down a little bit differently, because you do actually have to have a qualification and a license through the state to be an SLPA.
I'm
Does
sorry.
that make sense?
You're going to have to repeat yourself. You were breaking up and I couldn't hear what you had to say.
Oh, okay. So the SLPA is, you have to have your actual bachelor's or go through a program through a community college of like an AA in communication. And that's how we become the assistant. And so it's just a speech and language pathologist that hasn't met a master level criteria, but they're able to still do language and articulation under the supervision of our SLP. So the closest program that we have is Spokane Community College has one in the falls. And so we've had luck outreaching with them in the past, just as an assistant would be to our district. And so that's why it's just we just haven't had one in our district under the job description. And so that's why I would like to move forward having this, because I think this is what the surrounding districts have, and it helps with those hard to fill positions with our SLPs.
How many speech language pathologist assistants are we looking to hire?
Well, I'm going to stay optimistic and say that I'm hopeful that we could get SLPs. We need 2 SLPs for next year. So I'm going to stay hopeful to say that we do get those. However, I have had 0 applicants and that posting has been open for over a month. We're probably looking at 2 months now. And I've had 0 people apply. So that's why I thought it would be best to go with this route because I'm not getting any applicants. I've looked into contracting. I think maybe someone had mentioned that. I've looked into contracting, and that is virtual. And so I really would like to stick with trying to have some boots on the ground, working with our students in person before I choose to go virtually.
Right. Well, with respect to what you just said, with hoping to get 2 speech language pathologists, are you hoping to get 2 assistants, or would it be 4 assistants, or how many assistants are you looking to get for this position?
So I
Or
think
for
it
this
just, yeah, if I get 0 SLP applicants or am able to fill those positions, then I would like to get 4.
Okay. That sounds great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah,
There might
I
be more
still,
questions.
yeah, I have some questions. So, did we have SLPs this year or last year?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Our numbers have grown significantly from December till now, and so our hope. I had mentioned to Dr. Meyer a couple months ago that our hope would be that we'd be able to add an SLP for next year. And looking at our numbers and looking at how much we've grown, that definitely was the route that we wanted to go. And then one of our SLP has resigned, and she's choosing to go back into the clinical field. And so that's why we're looking at needing to hire 2.
So currently, do we not have any speech language pathologists at all for the district?
No, we have 3 currently with 1 resigning. So we've had 4.
Okay.
And Kelsey, we also have a speech language pathologist, Irate. Is that what I was referring to when I was talking earlier?
Yes. Yeah. So we also have a para that's been hired, and she's doing similar, just like how I explained it, under the direction of our SLP. She works mainly in our preschool. Our preschool is pretty heavy with language development. So she works with a lot with our preschool, and then she's also placed at the junior high.
Okay.
So we would retain 3 SLPs and hopefully hire 4 assistants to work under those 3 SLPs.
Correct.
Okay. All right. I just think we need to be more specific with the job description. And I think we need to look at the recommendation for the American Speech Language Hearing Association for their SLPAs and SLPs. And I think it needs to be specific on how many SLPA or SLPs, or I'm sorry, how many SLPAs can be supervised by a single SLP. Because as we grow, I just want us to be clear that the expectation that, you know, because their recommendation is that there's only 2 assistants under 1 SLP. So I would rather it be, there be a little bit more clarity in the description based upon the recommendations by the organization. The Idaho's a little laxed in their language, but other than that, I'm fine with that. As long as we have actual SLPs left in the district and we're hiring assistants to be boots on the ground, I think that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we'll bring that back to the board on possibly maybe June 1st, quick, we're going to do the agenda anyways, then we can bring it back for June 1st. If that's not enough time, we'll do June 10th.
Okay. So we will go ahead and table that. Next, we have the update to policy 5110, criminal history and background checks. It was brought to the board last meeting for first read. Does anyone have any questions or comments regarding it?
I do not.
I don't either.
Okay. Then I can entertain a motion on that.
I'll make a motion to update policy 5110, criminal history and background checks as presented.
I'll second that.
Having a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Next, we have update to policy 5120, equal employment opportunity and non-discrimination. Again, this was brought to the board at the last meeting for first read. Any other questions, comments, or concerns on the policy?
I have none.
Nope. I'll make a motion to accept the update to policy 5120, equal employment opportunity and non-discrimination.
I'll second that.
Having a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Next, we brought forth a new policy 5335, employee use of electronic communications devices and the accompanying form 5335F, electronic computing device agreement. These were brought for first read at the last meeting. Does anybody have any questions or comments, concerns on these documents or these policies?
I do not.
No, ma'am.
Okay, entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve policy 5335, employee use of electronic communications, and 5335F, the form, as presented.
I'll second that.
Hearing a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Next is the update to policy 5500 personnel files. Again, this was brought at the last meeting for first read. Does anybody have any comments, questions, or concerns on either the 5500 policy or the 5500P procedures for releasing personnel records to hiring school districts?
No.
I do not.
Okay. Then when we entertain the motion, I'd like to include policy 5500 personnel files and 5500P, the procedures.
Okay, I will make a motion to update policy 5500 personnel files, as well as 5500P procedures for releasing personnel records to hiring school districts as presented.
I'll second that.
Bring a motion in a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Last, we have an update to policy 5700 substitutes. This was brought before the board at the last meeting for first read. Does anyone have any questions or comments, concerns regarding the policy?
No, ma'am.
Nope.
Go ahead and entertain a motion on that.
I'll move that we approve the update to policy 5700 substitutes as presented.
I'll second that.
Bring a motion in a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Moving on to discussion items. The first item under discussion is the REACH Academy.
I guess I'm supposed to address this one. I don't know. It was on the agenda, and maybe I should have updated those minutes, but I didn't. I called and talked to the clerk and asked, why it was there, and I guess it prompted, because of my comment at the last meeting, prompted it to be put on the agenda, and then I asked for it to be removed because my comment was not necessarily an agenda item, but I said that I thought it needed further discussion because I still need clarification about this school. We now have a news report and a couple of articles, and I don't know how we got this school. I need clarification on what's happening. I don't know how we went from remote learning to a full-blown school
Without board approval. How did,
Well,
and
yeah.
in the past, you have said, well, we don't need it because it's just a name change. But I'm super confused too. Like, how did we get to this point without us having a say in this? I just would really like to know that, and maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, well, and I've said this before, the Reach Academy, we had Lakeland Online Academy, we offered the option. I put it in my last 2 superintendent updates. The board is certainly able to say, we don't want to offer this option. It's not, there's nothing that's set in stone. We are getting, all we are doing is gathering numbers to see what the numbers are. So if we have this option and some families still are not comfortable coming back to school, we did not want to miss the deadline for it to be an entity. And I did this in my 2 weeks ago superintendent report. Brian and Chad turned in the entity report so that we have the option. It doesn't mean that it's a for sure thing. I updated the board. I told the board that that happened. Then I said, when I did my board chair Thompson asked me to report on it at the meeting. So I reported at the meeting. We're gathering names. We want to continue to offer options for families. But if the board chooses not to have this as an option, you certainly can. But I said, at this point, we are going to continue to ask families who wants to do it. We used to be over 400. Right now it's 54 families. So that's obviously a huge decrease. And the board can certainly say, we don't want to offer it with 54 students. We don't think that's enough to run a program. We're not interested in continuing that. You probably saw in the Coeur d'Alene press that Coeur d'Alene is not going to offer their online hybrid magnet school. And they just sent that out yesterday. So it definitely is a board decision. We're not trying to do anything that the board doesn't approve. It's just that if we just say, we have to wait to see if there's board approval, we won't be able to give you accurate numbers of how many people are interested. So we're trying to gather all the ducks in a row so that, and then Patty was planning on being here tonight so that she could explain more questions of how much they have, what's the program look like. You know, there wasn't many questions last time, so she was going to bring 2 staff people. Right now we have the number of students allocates 2 staff people. I still have saved, which I told the board last time, I've saved spots back at the regular school so that if the board doesn't want to continue to offer an online option for families, I have a spot for the 2 people who have property rights to have it. So nothing, the train hasn't left the track. It's just trying to get information for the board so that you can have all the information before you make a decision on that.
Right.
So Patty's happy to come back and bring the staff and just spend more time with the board, whether it's a workshop or whether she comes here and just answers questions for the board, whether she meets independently with people, she's happy to do whatever. And then the board can make a decision on whether you want to continue that or not.
Yeah, I guess my confusion, I'll speak for myself, was that I understood a lot of what you're saying. I did not understand that we were creating a brick and mortar school, because we're now taking a district building, right, to house 1 day a week this school, and we're moving, we had the remote learning option. So I didn't understand that was the idea. I thought we were just going to offer remote learning like we offered, for families that still didn't feel comfortable or whatever. And then I believe that the way it's being presented to the public is that this is just, it's a school, it's a new school in Lakeland, and come sign up and go to school. Yeah.
It's a done deal.
So
Yeah,
that was.
She's been really clear with the families that she's talked to that it's still in the forming stages and that it's not a done deal. And what she did present when she was here last time, and it was on her slide, was the H when they did, and she showed you, and again, she did have to go fast, so she's willing to come back. She did have to go pretty fast, but she showed you that she's done parent surveys every single month, and she showed you the parent surveys that have come back have said they're missing that social interaction piece. Right. So they're missing that one. So then she said that's where the H came from, and the REACH program is the hybrid. If they could still come and have maybe 1 day a week, that they do a little social exchange, she talked about some community project or doing some project. It's just, it's taking something that really met the needs of over 400 families in our district, and she's trying to just continue that momentum if there's enough families interested. But I guarantee you, she knows that the board has to approve the program. She absolutely 100% knows that.
that's great. On the Lakeland website, though, it says enroll now, like it's ready to rock and roll. So I guess my problem as a board member is I feel like the school is set in motion and I haven't had the, I mean, I think it's a great idea. I really like the idea, but I haven't really had a voice in it. And so I guess I'm feeling kind of railroaded and feeling like, wait, can I talk? Can I speak? You know what I mean? And so I think maybe that's the frustration that you're experiencing from me, is just that I'm just feeling like I would have liked information, not necessarily from Patty, but more just, okay, this is what I'm thinking. This is, you know what I mean? Documentation, communication, things like that. Because it feels kind of like a little, like a big surprise. And then I see it on the news and it feels like an even bigger surprise. And so I think that is maybe the pushback that you're feeling, at least from me. I can't speak for everybody, but I think that's where we're coming from. So I don't really need Patty. The discussion needs to be had, I think, more on a base level, not necessarily, I don't need more information about how the school is going to work. I just need more base information, if that makes sense.
What do you mean by base?
So base information, how's the, like budget wise, how would this work? How, building wise, how would this work? What would be all the kind of logistics that you guys have probably thought through in your heads.
Okay,
But then
when would you like that? Like, I need to do a presentation at the next board meeting?
Well, I guess if you guys want to move this forward,
Well,
how it
again,
is right now, I mean, I would have said this could have happened maybe 2 months ago when the idea came up. That would be good, but that's not an option now. So I'm thinking that it would be nice to have that information maybe sooner than later. So as soon as we could get that information.
Okay, well then I'll need Patty to come back, because if she's the one that's going to be the director, she's the one that needs to address the issues, because it's her team that's developing the program.
Okay, all right.
So that's why I've shared it with the board. That's why I said it was still in process. And instead of coming and saying, telling the board, oh, we brainstormed this idea, before I have any data for you, that's not, my job is to at least bring you with information. So I was trying to get the information together to present something that you would have a package to look at. I don't think the train has left the track, to your point. The Coeur d'Alene was gathering enrollment for months. We're gathering enrollment and their board just changed their mind. So it's not, it's obviously okay that happens. It's not, it's not too late at all. We just don't even know, if we don't know how many people are interested. If we had 400 people still interested in doing it, the board might have a completely different feeling about the REACH program than if 54 people are interested. Right. So I just felt like I wanted to get the information for the board, and we were already doing LOA. It wasn't like it was a new program. They definitely changed the name and did something different just on all the people that have been involved in it and getting feedback, which I thought was a very positive thing, that they're trying to meet the needs of our community.
I absolutely
So
agree.
there's still time.
I think maybe the breakdown was just feeling like I was being told what was happening rather than being part of the discussion of what was happening. That was the breakdown for me.
And I'm sorry that you felt that way, because that certainly wasn't anything that Patty or I was trying to relay.
I'm sure you just need to understand, when we keep asking for, when people keep asking for information, that's what we're asking for, is foundational information, not more how this and that's going to run, just more discussion. So thank you for understanding and for engaging in that conversation.
Yeah, because the last meeting we had, that's what the conversation was. When they filed the paperwork, you were going to come back with more info. So I guess that's where I was stuck waiting.
Right, and that's why I brought Patty last time, and there was no info, but that you said you had more questions. Right. So I reached out and asked the whole board can you give me what the questions that you have? What are the questions you have? And I haven't received one single thing from any board member asking for follow-up.
Right, but in between the meeting that we had where you said you were going to bring information back to us, that there was still some things in the work. In the meantime, there were articles hitting the newspapers, open houses happening, a web page was built, things were sent to the families in the district, and the board was still waiting on you to bring us something, and we didn't have anything. So I think that's where like you said, other districts were doing it this way, but that was from my perspective, that was the last input I had. And then I saw all this other stuff happening. So I just wanted the clarification. That was all. I don't have any more, I don't think, discussion on that as far as the Reach Academy. So that's why when I called and talked to Chrissy, I was like, oh, I didn't need more information from.
Well, I certainly need a list. I have, if the board wants more information, all I have so far is you want the base info, so you want the money is what she said, but I need to know what else the board would like for information.
Yeah. Well, and I think maybe the board needs to have the discussion too about, whether we, if we want to do just like the remote learning, but then it misses the social piece that you're talking about, or do we want to move forward with the Reach Academy and reach out further to the community? I guess that's maybe a discussion for the board. Maybe the board needs to.
Well, I was hoping that would be on the lap when Patty was here, that would be the discussion.
Yeah.
But then people said they had further questions. So I've heard that we need to know the money piece, how the students will work, and base information. So
I guess, Paul, like, what did I mean, it feels like the train has left the track, but if you're telling me it's not, then, I was thinking we needed policy information. We would need, handbook information, calendar information, what the activities, how the grade reporting is going to happen, what the budgets are going to be, what the curriculum's going to be, all of that. What are we filing the school under? What's the model? What's the, all of the logistics behind that?
okay, that's helpful. Okay, I will have Patty and I will get that together and bring that to the next board meeting.
Dr. Meyer, you did state, it's my recollection that we were told at some point that paperwork had been filed about this school. Is that correct?
No, that was an email from Trustee Grissom where she asked how come the entity report, and then I explained in the superintendent's, well, via email, and then I said in the superintendent's report that there was a deadline that had to be, paperwork has to be addressed, even if you are planning on having any new names, entities in yours. So we put it in as an option. It's not finalized, it doesn't have to be followed through, but if we missed the deadline and we hadn't had the opportunity to figure out anything, if people are even interested still in staying with an online program or not, we had no idea out of the 400 families how many were staying. So
when does it need to be finalized?
well, at this point, it's the board's decision. We can finalize at the next board meeting. It's just how much information, how much time we want to give families. As of today, we have 54 families that are interested. So if we want those 54 families to have other options, I guess by the end of June would be my recommendation, so that families have an opportunity to look for other options if we're not going to go forward, or if we are going to go forward, then either way, we have staff people that I need to make sure are assigned in a spot, and then making sure that families have other options if this is not an option.
Okay, and in respecting this, with the budget thing, that's the budget that needs to come down. It's due, I believe, July 1, if I'm not mistaken. How do we know how this will impact Brian's numbers currently? Has it already been considered?
This doesn't cost additional funding. The students generate the ADA for the program. It's a sustainable program. It's not going to cost any additional money in the budget. It's a sustainable program. It's not even like a typical school where you have materials. They were using on the Lakeland Online Academy was using Lakeland curriculum with Google Classroom, and they had all the students had Chromebooks. It's not any new curriculum. It's not any transportation with busing. It's not any, you know.
Are we supplying all the Chromebooks?
The students already have Chromebooks.
Okay, but they're not district Chromebooks.
Yeah, the students already have this year because of the COVID. Remember, we used funds and everybody's already one-to-one. So the students already have Chromebooks. The 54 generates, you know, 2 staff people. It's a.
Would new incoming students receive district Chromebooks?
Yes, they would have to
Okay.
have district Chromebooks to be able to be on an online program.
Okay, and then is this online school being registered with the State Department as one of our schools?
If the board approves it and it to move forward, it would be a district school.
Okay,
And it was a separate, the only reason, and again, I put this all in that email, is the reason it was pulled out is because this year with COVID, and we're building the airplane while it was in flight, we created the online option for families because there were so many families that didn't feel comfortable coming back to school. So
okay,
those families stayed at their home school. They were still registered in their home schools for all
Right.
of the schools, and it caused a problem with attendance. It caused
Right.
a problem with ISAT scores. It caused a problem with getting communication. So they created, you know, the LOA created their own kind of school within the district, even though those kids were.
Correct.
So to alleviate those really some ethical discussions about those kids being in with the regular homeschools when they're really not, they were in a separate program. We just, for safety's sake, put it as a different, it still says LOA because it was LOA, that Patty hadn't changed the name to Reach. It's just to be on the safe side. Ryan and Chad just said, let's put this in as a separate entity. If we decide to continue, we didn't want to miss the deadline, but it's not a done deal. It just was making sure that box was checked so that we wouldn't later say, oh, we want this to be an online offer this option and we don't have the option anymore because we didn't meet the deadline.
okay, and you keep referring to this deadline. Is the deadline about establishing the online school as its entity, as its own school, so to speak, within our district? Is that the deadline?
Yes, and that deadline was it in March, right?
Yeah, Chair Thompson, the deadline it's from the State Department. So
Right,
if we are going to have a separate reporting entity, the State
Okay.
Department has to register that entity with EDGAR, which is the federal reporting. And the feds have a deadline for that. So the state sends out, you know, an email every year when that deadline's approaching saying if you're having any building changes, please submit those. Let's say we built a new high school, that we need to get it in by that deadline. It was a new physical building. So we put that in just so that we could have the option to use it in the fall if the program continues. If it doesn't continue, we won't report any students to it and it'll be, nothing will happen. So it was just so that really it allows us the option to move forward if the board decides. If not, then
so
there's an
Brian,
answer that has no students attached to it, and that's it.
was the Lakeland Online Academy reported, or is this like, was the paperwork filed for the Lakeland Online Academy as it was for COVID, or is this something new that we're doing?
I did it for the Lakeland Online Academy.
Okay,
I haven't even changed the Reach name. You can change the name pretty easily. In other words, changing the name from Timberlake Junior High School to Timberlake Middle School does not have to have that deadline because it already is there. For Lakeland Online to be its own entity, and we don't have them under the umbrella of Betty Keefe or John Brown, we had to get that in earlier because, but changing LOA to Reach that is not a big deal from the state's concern, it's just having the entity in the first place.
Okay, and this was decided, I mean, the deadline was March, so the ideas about moving forward with this for the potential of the future started at the early part of this year. Is that correct?
Well, we were running Lakeland Online Academy.
Right.
We were running the program under but all the schools were attached, even my, you know, when I give you that report of how many people are in Lakeland Online Academy, we're backing them out, those students physically, from the report of Betty Keeper and putting it the line. So
Right.
that reporting, so if we were going to continue, it's just much cleaner to
Right.
those kids associated with Lakeland Online Academy. We had to, you know, that was March, we had to just get the paperwork in. So that, I mean, that's really all it is.
And it's the paperwork to establish a new school.
Well, yeah, I mean, we shared that paper with you. So it's a simple one-page form, and they asked if, are you establishing, you know, Lakeland Online Academy? If I could, and we said it was a virtual school because we wanted to have the option, if we're going to continue, to report under that and not have to report under 10 different schools.
Okay.
I mean, I guess that's it. But if we never, if the board decided that, you know, the program isn't a go, then I would never have a student attached to it. And the fact of the state's concerned, it really doesn't exist because there's no students attending. But we have the option if you decide. We're just trying to give us options to move forward within those deadlines that the state has.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So I'm sorry, I have one more thing. So you said it is, and I think I do remember now that you say that, a virtual academy. Because I'm thinking policy, the policies that we would need to run that. So that's what it would be listed under.
Well, on the form of the state, they just asked that question. It's
right.
Like, is it a virtual school? And I answered.
Right.
So
Okay.
it's just the form.
Sure.
How that ties with our policy.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so is there any further discussion regarding the Reach Academy at this point?
I don't believe so.
No, I not at the moment. No, I don't have.
Okay. Dr. Meyer, do you have any other questions of us with anything for the Reach Academy?
Nope, I'll just bring Patty back and bring information about the money handbook, calendar, curriculum, the model that they'll use, the logistics behind all of that.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. Moving on to the transportation spot inspection, the letter that we received regarding that for discussion. I noticed that the letter got updated with highlights.
Yep, so Board Chair Thompson, Mr. Wallace, CFO Wallace, and Susie Moore are here to answer any questions that the board may have.
Okay.
And Chair Thompson and members of the board, the highlights are just, I highlighted those because on the last page, we had some comments I added.
Okay.
And so the highlights were just, the comments refer back to what, if you want to know, this comment referred to this highlight. So, for example, on this bullet, the district shall emphasize the importance of post-trip inspection to ensure no students are left on the bus. The comment that the inspector made, because I actually called him on this, I said, well, we don't leave kids on the bus, and here's our practice. And he said, well, I wasn't making a comment about that. He said that I just want to make sure that on the post-trip inspection, let's say there was a cracked windshield that they're telling the mechanic, so we get pissed because the mechanic can't fix it if they don't know about it. I said, well, that makes sense. I said, why did you add that? He said, well, I'm just copying and pasting from other reports. I said, well, I'd appreciate it. It makes it look like we're leaving kids on the bus that you wouldn't do that. So anyway, my comments on the last page sort of say that. And so I just thought on some of the report, it was we have a spot inspection every year. This is the inspector's first year in the position. And so I know after talking with him, he was saying, well, I was taking parts of the manual and for my comments, copy and pasting, things like that. So I think I'm hoping that he'll be more careful with his language. I said, well, you see this and I'm showing it to the board. It'd be more helpful if you just didn't copy and paste, that you actually wrote the comments. And I thought, the front of the letter, of course, I think he's very complimentary of the district department. We're proud of him. And I had Susie Moore, Director of Transportation, here for any questions. And she did want to highlight that I thought it was pretty good. He looked at 1,369 inspection points and only 17 issues out of that 1,369. So that is, we think a pretty high rate, obviously, of passing those 1,369 points. But since the board has seen this and probably the first time for some of our board members to see it, I wanted to have a few comments to get perspective on it. And I could go down. Yeah, but this will go. Go ahead and announce again. Sorry. So the comments that I thought were first on page 3, it's the first highlight. His comment where 2 buses were removed from service due to serious safety violations is noted in iBus. iBus is just their system. And so I said, what was the serious safety violations? And 2 were, one was there was an exhaust leak around the gasket. It was fixed the day of the inspection. They replaced the gasket. The other was an ABS light came on at startup. It was just a sensor issue. They ordered the sensor and fixed it. So I wanted to get perspective. I said, next time you have comments, it'd be nice if you say it was fixed that day that you actually said that in the report. Again, the post-trip inspection, regarding no students are left on the bus. This comment, further on says not direct towards students being left on the bus. Our standard practice is for drivers check buses after checking the bus empty sign. So, that's just our standard practice. When our bus is empty, we hang that back there. So the drivers are doing that. We usually don't leave kids on the bus.
No, and I go through and I make sure every day that they're all up before I leave that.
They did make a recommendation of implementing a safety busing committee, a separate committee. I suppose it's something we could do if the board wanted to. I did make a comment that Susie is part of the district safety committee. They do talk about transportation issues, fires involved, police are involved with that committee. We have a separate committee. Sometimes it's duplicating that work, but something we could do if you wanted. I just wanted to let you know that we sort of have a hybrid, not exactly what the recommendation was, but we do that. And then, I don't know, I just thought the comment when you say when a bus is removed from service, which is like that bus with the gasket was removed from service for 2 hours, I guess. But regardless, the district notified the State Department on the appropriate form. It sort of sounded like we weren't using the appropriate form. Well, again, he was just copy and pasting. Yeah, we'll do it. And the form is literally going in the system and just checking that we handled it, just so you know. But we do get this a spot inspection every year. And I can go to the top. And the summary is the first 2 pages, but we're here for any questions. And
yeah, I had questions for, sorry, Madam Chair. I had questions for the inspector too, based on some of his comments, because even the statute that he cited for the missing ad hoc committee, that statute doesn't include any ad hoc committee or committee period. So I wasn't sure how the board was supposed to address that. I can dig through all the rest of them. And then in some of it, now that you say copy and pasting, now I understand why, because his ratio, he had like a piece of a sentence and then there wasn't the rest. Like, we don't know what the rest of the ratio is supposed to be, so.
Yeah, I anticipate as he gets more feedback from being new in the position, that the reports will be more what we're used to in the past. But there was a retirement of a long-time inspector at the state level. He was Virginian, she'd been there a long time. I think it was just, there was some copy and paste, because I called him when I saw it. I said, I had a little bit of heartburn.
Yep.
So anyway,
Right.
I think if he gets enough calls from other district personnel saying,
Yep.
wait a second, that it'll improve over the years.
Well, I don't know how the board can remedy the couple of spots that he said the board needs to review its policy, and that we need to have this ad hoc committee, because I don't know. So I don't know how we find that out. How do we remedy his report?
And I think, right, and there's, in a lot of these audit reports, there's recommendations and findings. So like the actual finding exhaust, like that would be a finding. You gotta fix that. A recommendation is that, it's a recommendation, doesn't even have to. It's just a recommendation. And I think some of those recommendations, I do think he was, like I said, because he told me on the phone that he was, well, some of the comments I was copying and pasting, so I think we need to take that into account as far as his comments.
Yeah. So
Go ahead.
sorry, I just had one more. He says for minimum list, see the CISPO page 48. So there's some, or 47, sorry. And that's on page 7 of this document. If we keep going, it's one of his right there. See, the trustees review is underlined, so I'd like to review our policies, but I don't know what this other, for the minimum list, but I don't know what that list is he's referring to, or where I find that list.
And neither, it's on the, CISPO's on the state website, but on page 47, I couldn't find it on page 47.
Yeah.
It didn't say anything about that.
I'm not
Okay.
sure. It may be literally a clerical error
Okay.
when he was copying and pasting.
Yep. All right, so what happens after this report now and these things are remedied? I mean, if we have these other recommendations,
well, I would say the big ones are, if they really found, like, if there's a mechanical issue like they found with the gasket, those have to be fixed, and we have to acknowledge that they're fixed.
sure.
If there was, maybe some process that we really were not doing well or correctly, then they would, then we have to, remedy those situations. I mean, he made a recommendation, we need another mechanic. Well, yeah, I don't disagree. I also need another bay then for my mechanic physically. So I mean, so they make a recommendation saying, well, here's there, but that,
Right.
It's just that recommendation. You don't have to after we move forward and run the program.
Okay.
So yeah, but yeah, the have to fix things, and it's never bad to have a second set of eyes.
Well,
Look at us,
absolutely.
and yeah,
Right.
when we look at that, and Zoom was really good. And so the spot inspections, yeah, you can, sometimes it's your practice as far as just your drivers and stuff like that, or process your training. And so definitely try to improve every year.
Okay. I have no more.
Okay. My first question is his comments about the technician to vehicle ratio. How many technicians school bus technicians do we have?
We have 2.
Okay, and how many buses do we have?
We have around 50.
Okay, so how is that going? Is that adequate?
I believe so.
Okay. And just so you know, I can't see you guys, so I just ignore however my head is flopping around. My other question is, does the district well, I guess, who does the accounting that got modified? Is that done in the bus department, or is that done at the district office?
County here?
Yeah.
Yeah, is this the adjustments to the reimbursement when he's going through that?
Yep.
Right, so Cindy happily does that, our treasurer. The bus reimbursement process
Mhm.
the state does is the most ridiculous, unbelievably clunky process ever invented in the history of government. We literally, they look at, we get reimbursed by our actual expenditure.
Okay.
We get reimbursed, some expenditures we get 85% back. Some expenditures we get 50% back. And so some of those adjustments, and then they literally will go through, the state will, line by line, of every expenditure that we do, that we tag with an 85% reimbursement or a 50% reimbursement. And then they will make a determination the year afterwards saying, well, we're not going to give that one to you, we're going to give this to you. And there's no, it's sort of an individual basis every year. So we just sort of go through the process and keep the data, and they make those determinations. It is absolutely crazy the amount of paperwork we do it, and they do that for every district in the state. The state spends more money looking at whether they're going to give us 50 cents on a 37-cent screw or 85% on an 80 cent. It drives me nuts. But regardless, that is Idaho code, and we move forward.
Okay. Those were just my two questions.
Sorry, that is actually, I think it's ISBA. It has a resolution out there to try to change the funding for transportation. Some of it, for us, from a business measure, wouldn't even be more money, which they don't fully fund us, so that would be good. But if they could just simplify it, would make everybody much happier. That's just sort of my editorial comment.
Yeah, when I looked at that, the reason I just ignored it is because it reminds me of typical government. You didn't write it on the right line. Not that it was wrong, it was on the wrong line.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
It is the most, Cindy Hackney spends hours at the end of the year going through this with Susan Moore. I mean, they sort of tag team information to submit, a report this thick to the state for the reimbursement. I am very happy to delegate that task.
Thank you.
Did anything good come out of it? The inspector, I mean, like all of this, you're looking at it thinking, man.
No, I think,
The first page.
No, I mean, like from your perspective, like, did he point something out? Did you learn anything new? Or just that this is a new person and it's very obvious? Okay. Well, that cutting and pasting did not do well, did it? No, for anybody. Thank
Well,
you.
I commend the department for the accolades that it did receive. You guys are doing a great job.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that they didn't list enough of them because you're a saint, girl. You're doing a really good job.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Alrighty, the next item for discussion is on the boundary revision with the Coeur d'Alene School District. And it looks like 2 documents were provided.
Yeah.
I am a little concerned about the first document.
Yes.
well, in the first document where I just pulled the data,
Mhm.
And you can look at the values and you say, wow, that's a big difference. The net taxable value that we're losing I talked with Eric Herringer, who helps us with our bond and that type of planning, is 0.18% of our total assessed value. So the impact on our tax rate is negligible. If really it's de minimis, it's nothing. I think in the long run, when you look at that swap, Hayden Canyon is platted for 1,800 residential units. Now we do have some of that's already in. So let's say we're getting another 900 houses in the sections that we would be adding to the district. When you look at the map of where Coeur d'Alene out there between Hutter and Atlas would be getting, there's existing a large portion of that as it goes east are 5-acre parcels. Well, you can see right here.
Right.
So if these stay single home on acreage, they'll go up a little bit, right? Because this is all undeveloped. You have a 78-acre parcel that's only net taxable value of $47,000 because it gets the forest exemption. Well, the moment that becomes 400 houses, it's going to be on that 80 acres way more than $8 million below. So in the long term, I think that the value of Hayden Canyon we get for the district, we're going to have definitely significant taxable value to help spread the costs of any local levies in the future, for sure. It's just how fast, now when does it happen? It's how fast they build it out. Just like, you know, so I've noted like on here, the Viking Homes. So that is an 80-acre, and you can see those apartments right there on the north side of Hayden. So it's only 119,000 right now. Obviously, that value is going to be up next year when those apartments are active and they no longer get their agricultural and rural exemptions. But you know, again, it depends how fast the Viking Homes can develop that whole 80 acres. And that was the question. I believe all these single home, I don't think those are going to be subdivided really anytime soon. Maybe they would be if individual owners sold to a developer, possibly. But right now, they're single family home. Just sort of like if you go out towards Garwood and things like that. But I think in the long term, because the development's going to happen kind of the pace that it's such a small percentage of our overall tax base, and that with getting Hayden Canyon, that's a significant addition when it gets built out, that I think that it's, you know, we don't own land, this is just our tax rate. We're talking.
Right.
Well, from what I can see from the second document that you sent, it looks like it's been a long going, you know, 10 years here of back and forth and back and forth. And is Hayden going to approve it? Or are they not going to approve it? And then.
Yeah, well, it's been approved. The plat's been approved. It's been when they've gone. In fact, when the first original plat was approved, the 1,800 homes, then sort of, it was like 10 years ago, the recession hit and they sort of held off. And it was just a couple years ago where they had the hearings. And the only reason they had to have the hearings at the city of Hayden was they changed the plan a little bit. So they had to go back and get the modifications approved. If they didn't get the modifications approved, then the original plan would be approved. So, I mean, they're definitely moving forward. When we had those things, they're putting information in. The Hayden Canyon Charter School was there. That was part of the development. They supported to get utilities there. I mean, so they're busting the sewer through, and they've been doing some of that infrastructure. You can see some of the activity right off Lancaster there, where they're going. How fast the phases go, I guess I don't know.
Well, I guess I'm struggling with the second document as well. It was obviously maybe a very thick document. We received 4 pages of it. from what I gathered out of the document is Hayden Canyon is 610 acres, and we're only going to be acquiring 106. And out of the 610 acre development, 40% of that property has to be open space, according to the 4 pages that were provided. I'm curious how much of that 106 acres that we're getting is going to be open space or green space or whatnot, because the few pages that we were provided, 224.4 acres has to be open space. And I don't know if what we're getting is part of that, which if it goes to open space, then there is no tax benefit for us. I mean, the 1,820 residents and mixed usage that's going to be in this 610 acres, how much of that is going on the 106? That's where I'm a little concerned when I look at that first page, when you say, yes, once the development comes, we're going to be getting a much bigger tax base. But I'm concerned that I don't want our district to get the short end of the stick. I mean, at the moment, according to the pages that we were given, the PUD doesn't even have to be completed, or it has to be completed by April 9th, 2029. So it appears by the pages we were given that, you know, we're still several years down the road for development, which honestly, given the stresses in our district of the needing more space in schools, etc., maybe that's a good thing. But I don't know, when I'm very concerned with us giving over twice the amount of acreage, not having any assurance that, you know, we're getting apples, we're comparing apples to apples by dollar value. I'm really concerned.
Yeah.
I hear where you're coming from, Chair Thompson. I guess I would say that there's a couple things for you to consider. First, one reason we're doing the move is not just, well, first, I'll speak to the property values. If we don't annex this as land and we kept that Coeur d'Alene land, at some point, the patrons can ask to have the boundaries changed without, regardless of what the school districts think. There's a process that the patrons can appeal to both boards and say, it makes sense for us to be in Coeur d'Alene schools instead of Lakeland schools, because Atlas Elementary is right next door and Coeur d'Alene's new building is right next door when they own the land. So we could say, well, no, we're not going to let you go. And Coeur d'Alene could say, we don't want you. But they get to go to the state board, and the state board could say, it is best for those patrons to be closest to their neighborhood school. And I think that is likely what would happen, because we had a hearing and that was going to happen until we said we'd work with Coeur d'Alene to try to make the boundaries make sense. So I guess what I'm saying is we could lose that land and get nothing, and we have no say in it. That it's a possibility. We may not. That's having a crystal ball. But so part of the process is we were trying to say, okay, where can we get the boundaries that make more sense geographically with natural current arterials with Hayden and Hutter? I mean, Hutter's supposed to be that north-south corridor, and try to firm up these boundaries and not be so jig-jagging that it's just a little clearer, and it also coincides with the Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene, east-west boundary. So we're trying, one, to get ahead of what may just happen to us.
Yeah.
Two, we are also looking and saying, what's best for the community? It's not great that boundary over by Atlas Elementary, that you literally have people kitty corner to Atlas Elementary and Lakeland schools, and a neighborhood a little bit north, family houses that are actually farther away across the street or a little bit, and they're in Coeur d'Alene schools. So we're trying to clean that up for the families. It just sort of makes sense. So I'd say from just a pure community point of view, I think we're trying to make what happens, and this move for Hayden Canyon puts all of Hayden Canyon in this. So those, now that extra 100 acres, what is open space and what's that? I guess we can look at those maps of the actual plat. But there's going to be quite a bit houses, I would say.
So then are the remaining acres of Hayden Canyon, because it's specific, the development specifically states 660, I wrote it down, 4 acres, 610 acres, plus or minus. Is the remaining amount of those acres part of the Lakeland district?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so this was, so that part of that development, half of it was in Coeur d'Alene, half of it was, well, not half, or, and some of it was in Coeur d'Alene, some of it was in Lakeland. And so that was the same reason that I just explained there. We're saying now we're going to have Hayden Canyon, this big development, with people possibly living across the street from each other, one going to Coeur d'Alene, one going to Lakeland. That's what we were trying to avoid, that situation for that future development also.
Okay. Do you know if our budget can sustain for 9 years a loss of 90% of this taxable revenue, the net taxable value?
At the very start, I said this taxable value is 0.18%. So it's, we're losing, you know, it's not even a percent.
It's still like $8 million, so it's still a lot of money, right? We're
But
giving
we're
up.
not losing money. We're just using, it would not make a difference in our tax rate. Maybe a third of a penny on some of these tax bills per thousand.
How is it not making a difference on what we're receiving if the value that we're taking or that we're going to be getting is only 871,000, but we're giving 8,300,000 away?
That's a good question. This is important to remember, that this is taxable value of properties. This is not taxes we receive.
I understand that.
So the total tax base of the district is like $5 billion. So this is a very small percentage of that. So we get the same amount of money regardless. We don't get any more money. If the tax value of the whole district changes, we only receive the money that the voters approve. So if we have our $9.5 million supplemental levy, the question is it going to be, you know, I like to explain to people, so if I had a levy of $1,000 and I had 2 people, and they have the same exact property, they both have to pay $500. We get a third house and all 3 of the same exact value. Now, those 3 people each pay $333.33. But the district still only gets the $1,000. So what all this is how much what's the rate that people pay? We don't get any more additional dollars. It impacts us enough. There's no financial impact except for the very, very minimal change to the tax rate that we would see, and it's such a small amount relative to that number, it's really a de minimis impact.
So am I to understand what you're saying, that this $8,360,000 of net taxable value against the percentage that is to our district is going to be the exact same amount that we're going to receive on the $871,087 net taxable value?
Yes, because we don't receive dollars based on our tax value. We receive dollars on what the voters approve. So our voters approved a $9.5 million levy. If we had one property owner in the district by law, they would have to pay the whole $9.5 million. So since we have many property, then it's split up amongst everybody in their tax value. So it's not affecting the $9.5 million collection. It's just affects how much little piece of the pie every property owner has to pay.
So they have to pay a little bit more because because we're giving this tax away.
Correct. So let's say somebody's rate was on a $300,000 home, they're paying, let's say $300. With this, they're gonna pay $300 and a fraction of a penny. I mean, that's really the type of difference. It's so little compared to our overall tax rate, especially when you see with the growth that's happening. Does that make sense? I'm not.
So then what you're saying is the percentage will go up as opposed to going down because we're letting go of the amount of
Right.
net value. Okay.
Our tax rate would go up slightly but it's so little that nobody's gonna really know.
We hope.
Well, no, I mean, like our current tax rate is gonna be.
You mean they're gonna feel it? Like people are gonna know because we're gonna be transparent, but nobody's really gonna feel it because it's not gonna be $100 per person that it's gonna go up. I mean, we don't want it. We're not. That just sounded like you were like saying, well, no one's gonna know. Well, no one's gonna feel it. Is that what you mean? It's not gonna be enough money that someone's gonna feel it.
Someone has to pay, if their tax bill is $500 and now their tax bill is $500 and a penny.
Mhm.
For, let's say, argument's sake, so you can't do fraction, it's really a fraction of a penny, but let's say it's a penny. Generally, I've never gotten significant complaints on that.
Sure.
It's when it's gone up, like you said, $100, then you definitely do it, right?
Sure.
And so I'm saying that in this overall tax, like, and you gotta remember that tax rate, that this is one aspect of that, of our tax rate. But from year to year, when this officially would come off the books, we still would have all the other growth that's happening in the district that's going to supersede the value of this. So people, you know what I'm saying? So, okay, we didn't have this $8 million, but we had $100 million worth of growth. So now we only had, $92 million worth of growth, but we still had growth. So I think our tax rate is still going to go down even with this because there's just too much going on.
Sure. So I might ruffle a few feathers. So far they're putting a school right kind of on the boundary of our district.
Or they bought property.
Right. So what's going to keep them from putting another school on this new boundary that we give them and try to creep this way? Like, I guess I don't understand. I mean, it's just discouraging to me that they would put a school right on our boundary and then want some of our land. And I understand they're trying to trade. I don't necessarily think it's a fair trade at this point, just looking at things. And I know you're saying it's not going to impact us, and that regardless of what we do, the patrons can go and have that land annexed anyway. I guess I just feel like I'd like to maybe explore a little bit on maybe having some discussions with them, and see if maybe they would sweeten the pot a little bit, in consideration that the acreage is a lot less and the net taxable value, there's a big difference between the two of those. So, I mean, I don't know if it's worth going back to them and having some discussions about that. It just feels a little out of balance to me at this point. And I'm willing to hear what you have to say about that. But that's just my 2 cents on it.
I guess in what Brian was saying, and I understand what you're saying about the net taxable value. I think the only time that would make a difference is if the district sought to sell a piece of property. Then there might be a difference, because like Brian was saying, what the district receives is totally irrelevant to
it's just going to affect our patrons. It will affect them. I mean, it might not affect them a lot. Right. It's still going to affect them a little bit. You know what I mean? And so I'm just trying to bring up every possible thought scenario. I just think at first I thought this is great. I think and then I started looking at the acreage differences and thinking, I just really want to make sure this is a good decision.
So here is, some of the property lines in the area, and this is Hayden Cutter. So right here, this is, when I had it, is the core innovation land,
Yes.
okay? Right
There's
next to it
apartments.
is Viking Homes. And where
Apartments.
those apartments are going right there, you see right
Yep,
there now.
yep.
Coeur d'Alene bought property here. Okay? So, right now, the line goes along this, sort of this beam, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, if they have the land here, and these apartments come in, and they petition Coeur d'Alene schools to come in.
Sure.
Likely
No,
the state board would approve.
No, I get it. That
Right,
is
so-
true.
So what this does is they have the school there and it gives a little bit of a buffer before our boundary. So, and it's sort of this, it's this major arterial, sort of a natural boundary.
Mm-hmm.
So it just sort of makes sense. Because right here, this is Post Falls here. This is currently Lakeland, but down here, this is where the Post Falls Coeur d'Alene line is down High Prairie.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So then it sort of just has Coeur d'Alene ends here and it's Lakeland, here.
Sure.
And going across. I think that all this land here, when we start going across, are these 5-acre parcels. They're all sort of split up in 5-acre parcels.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how fast that's going to be developed,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
But, we have right here, this is Lakeland, but this is Coeur d'Alene. And Atlas Elementary is right there. These people on Giovanni is right here. Viking Homes already made a request for us a couple years ago for that right there. Here's Atlas Elementary for them to go into Coeur d'Alene. Both districts said, well, we'll try to clean up the lines to make it better for the patrons here. And there was a meeting actually at Atlas Elementary, and the state board of the hearing officer was there. And you get a feeling that when you're in one of those meetings, how it's going to go. If the state board had to make a decision,
It's walking distance.
it was going to be in Coeur d'Alene. We were going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Same situation there.
right.
I gotcha.
And then if we go up here, if we get up to this is Lancaster. And now you can see some of the parcel lines. So yeah, so like this parcel, which is part of, that's the church property, but this was already Lakeland here, but this was like Coeur d'Alene. It's a goofy line. The line goes, when you look at these things, it jig-jags through the airport. It's like a.
Sure.
And so, what we really thought when we looked at this was that all of Hayden Canyon, because Hayden Canyon's all here. And we just thought if this was all the big Hayden Canyon development, including this land and, this little parcel here, if that ended up going in Lakeland, it just sort of makes more sense. And these people, we just grandfathered in to grandfather them in, as sort of a line.
Okay.
Thank
Thank you for going through that with me. It's such a hard decision. It's a hard thing to.
Yeah, and actually, we had trustees before you that had the same concerns and said the same things. I just think in the long run, if we, the state board will understand, the line has to be somewhere.
Yeah.
Right? So,
And it's decided logically. Yes.
Well, at least we can say, we tried to be proactive, we tried to do what we thought was best for these two communities and for future growth. And I think coming from that point is better. Otherwise, what will happen, it will happen in little piecemeals. Like one neighborhood will come up and they'll do the
Sure.
So when I was at Coeur d'Alene, the West Landings, it was in Post Falls. So I don't know if you know that development, but you know
Yes.
where the Landings is, and then the West Landings came in. Well, the Landings was Coeur d'Alene, the West Landings was Post Falls. And so the West Landings asked to come into Coeur d'Alene. I think the Coeur d'Alene district was neutral. Post Falls might have been opposed because they didn't want to lose the tax base. The state board approved them to come into Coeur d'Alene.
Gotcha.
And so, I mean, Coeur d'Alene was being.
They weren't.
They weren't asking, right?
Yeah.
And so that's when they said they did that land swap, and Post Falls got the waterfront, and it was all along Hutter, sort of cleaning that up.
Okay.
And they were doing the same thing because they could see the writing on the wall. Because one development comes in, and let's say phase one of a development comes in, they could do it. Then the next year, phase two, they do it.
Sure.
Because it's only the area that they draw. And so it just, at some point, you just
Kind of a
want to be
gamble.
proactive. Yeah, no, and I understand. I think, I mean, when you look at the initial value, yeah, I mean,
It doesn't look good.
it doesn't look good. But I think in the long run, a lot of that property we're getting is going to be the high value.
High
ones.
end, definitely, if it ever gets to, it's a matter of time, it might be 10 years, yeah.
I don't know if that build out, they're going to start building.
Trustees, I wanted to add that when you said there's 4-page document, it looks like there's more. It was a 534-page document, board book wouldn't let me attach it, but they're great.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Chrissy.
So I can forward that to you if you want to read through the whole thing. It's exciting.
And that was the planning and zoning, that's the most recent I had, and it has like public comment and all.
Sure,
Some stuff
sure.
that's really not.
Thank you for kind of working through that and obliging me there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, the previous board, I know one board member went on that Giovanni Estates. I mean, he says, well, we have to draw a line somewhere and they get a good education here and I'm not going to vote for it. So, but knowing that, I can tell you that the state board would have maybe had a different opinion. That's all.
Yeah, and that's really where the rubber meets the road there.
On the lines, yeah. And
Right.
We have been lucky in Kootenai County. We really haven't dealt too much with this.
That's good.
You know, I'm not sure how, you go down to Treasure Valley, how all those districts with Napa and West Ada and Caldwell and, that
All intermingled,
they
kind
had
of,
to deal with
yeah.
a lot more.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. You're very
welcome.
patient.
Brian, I do have one quick question, hopefully. Does Coeur d'Alene, just thinking outside the box here, do they have any property around the Hayden Canyon development that they could pop a school up and then try and acquire it back?
No, they don't have any property about Hayden Canyon, no.
Okay.
The closest school is Hayden Meadows and Hayden Elementary.
Right.
Right there on Government Way and Hayden.
Yeah.
Those are the only, in fact, they tried to sell the Hayden Elementary site and they didn't get a high enough offer. That was just in the paper.
Okay.
So they're actually trying to get rid of that. That they own like 6 acres there, and then Hayden Meadows is just a little bit east on Hayden Avenue. And did they sell the 20 acres behind Hayden Meadows? I think they did. Yes, they did it. And they used to have 20 acres right by Hayden Meadows South for like another school, and they sold that, and it's being developed now. I don't know if I would have sold that piece, but that wasn't my decision.
Because this document did reference a lot of ifs, if this got approved or if that got approved or this addendum or that addendum. And I don't know the date of this document, but we have an assurance that the Hayden Canyon development is in the state to move forward and construction will construction will happen.
Yeah, that is my understanding, that they were, that they're starting to break ground right now.
Okay.
And how fast their phases go and things like that, I don't know, but my guess with the housing market right now, they're going to try to strike when it's hot.
Right, and I understand it. I just know that this land was sort of a point of contention for several years with the city, so, and it's developed.
Right, and yeah, and the city approved it, years ago. So the last time it came before the city, people were under the misnomer that they were gonna not allow it, but it already been approved, so they were just approving some changes to the original development. But if the city would have denied it, then they would have just gone with their original plan because they'd already gone through the hoops.
Okay.
Okay.
So I think a lot of the patrons who were all fired up saying save Hayden Lake didn't understand that, that boat had already sailed.
Yeah.
Years ago.
Yeah.
But we have we would then have the entire acreage amount for Hayden Canyon.
I believe so. I mean, if we look at I don't want to get too boring, but if you get on this, like right here. Well, I don't get into this, for you, but you can actually look and you get additional information on parcel. This one will say Coeur d'Alene, this one over here will say Lakeland.
Yeah.
So some of those are definitely.
So if you click the little out arrow, will it bring up, I know what you're talking about, see it
Yeah,
on
you
there.
gotta do a search, you gotta do, I can hit this, and I can hit,
Okay,
yeah, the way I do it is I hit this info, I do a search, I search the polygon number, and then you get the additional info. But anyway,
okay,
yeah, the Stafford Holdings, that's the developer for Hayden Canyon.
okay.
But yeah, it's supposed to be this and this over here on the south side is part of it. Maybe, I don't know, I don't think this is part of it, but and I think, I'm not sure, some of the open space might be, or some of this canyon, but anything that's gonna be on a hill is gonna be a home for the views.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome. Close that.
Okay, so the next discussion item is policy rewrite, and there is an ISBA email attached.
Madam Chair, can I add one thing to the last discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
So if you pull up the zoning map for Hayden, it does have that area marked as residential and planned unit development. So the zoning's already there. I don't have to look at the plat, but the zoning's already there. It's been decided for all that area.
Okay, thank you. So I think, Chrissy, would you like to speak to this policy rewrite?
Sure. So if you remember when ISBA came and trained a few weeks ago, Chris Lamont stated that some of that $6,000 reimbursable money by statute could possibly be used to help us with policy rewrite, and that they could look into making that work. So all we've been given is that brochure from ISBA on what they offer in terms of policy rewriting. And so I asked for more in-depth information into how they would cater that to a certain district. And so April responded with that email on how that works, just to clarify if that's something trustees wanted to look into. And we do have right around $3,000 left in our year of that 6,000.
Do we know what the benefit of this would be?
I would say the benefit is they estimate it to be a 2-year process. So it's always vetted by their attorneys if there's changes, but I think time-wise, it's about the same amount of time. I think it takes a little bit of the burden off of trustees time-wise with meeting weekly. They're going to throw out a section at a time once they complete it to districts, and you guys would have 3 months to go over that policy, have them correct anything. They kind of do a little bit of that writing legwork for you. And then you get to read through and edit as you see fit.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions or discussion items with regard to the policy rewrite in the ISBA email?
I'm looking for the cost. And I guess the cost is based upon whatever option we
Right.
choose.
So
Okay.
Trustee Grissom, I can look back and find that flyer, but I know I'm using the wrong word, but a policy rewrite specific to a district, I think is $7,000. And then a full policy rewrite that wasn't specific to a district was $6,000. And then there were two below that just had to do with opening up policy manuals, so we could just grab them and edit directly out of there instead of doing the copy, paste, and reformatting that we're doing now.
Okay.
Oh, right, that, you know.
Yeah, I'm looking for that to see. I vaguely remember. Okay, I don't think I have any more.
Trustee Majors, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. Then we can move on to the first read of new policy 2240, class size. This is a policy that we do not have currently. And the information listed on there is based off of ISBA and IDAPA requirements. I guess it would be ISBA's recommendations and IDAPA's requirements. Are there any comments, questions, or anything to discuss on this?
I don't have any.
No.
Okay. The second policy for first read is policy 4130, which is going to be renumbered to 4260, and its records available to public, and there is an accompanying form that goes with it. Are there any questions or comments on these policies?
I have none.
No, ma'am.
Okay. There wasn't a significant amount of change, but there was change done to it. Moving on is the first read for an update to policy 5300, which is going to be renumbered to 5290. It's political activity and staff participation. Are there any questions or comments on this policy?
No, it looks good.
And then next is a new policy 5330. It's employee electronic mail and online service usage and the accompanying form with this policy. Any questions or comments on this one?
I don't have any.
I don't have any.
Okay. All right, the last discussion item is the district MOU. And this is the 2019-2020 Lakeland Spirit Lake SRO agreement. It was brought to my attention that with just the stuff with the SROs that we had, and there were I guess negotiations with regarding to how we pay 60-40, 70-30, etc. The board's never seen these agreements. And so I had just asked that they be provided for the SRO officers. We don't have one for Rathdrum. I don't know if Rathdrum's looks similar to this. But it appears that we're paying a portion of their salary. Is that correct, Dr. Meyer? Or if Ms. Sexton is there?
Yeah, if you could speak to it, that would be great.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I can't see anybody.
Good evening.
Evening.
Mary Thompson. Whoops. My legs aren't working very well. I'm sitting so long. We don't currently have an MOU with Rathdrum because due to the 6% budget pullback last year, and the resignation of the Rathdrum SRO, we pushed the pause button on that. I have been talking to Chief McLean about reinstating the Rathdrum SRO. She's in kind of negotiations with the city council. And so I'm just waiting to hear from her on that. But that's why there's not one for Rathdrum right now. Both have been the same wording as far as what we pay. And I did have our district safety meeting last night, and Captain Miller was there as well as Deputy Clausen and the District 1 Deputy Fontaine. And Captain Miller made it very clear to the whole team that he still wants to be talking with us about working toward an SRO. He definitely wants an SRO in one of our schools. So we will continue. I talked to Dr. Meyer, when we bring our crisis plan this summer for your approval, I would love in executive session to have some opportunity to just get some feedback from you about what you would like to see for our program, so that I'm representing the wishes on that.
Ms. Sexton, I thought we were utilizing an SRO from Rathdrum.
We had one. We are, Greg Hudson, Officer Hudson, is not at all on our payroll this year because we had to push the pause button. Chief McLean made the decision to kind of reassign him or reclassify him. So he's in their department, he's called a youth advocate. And she has his patrol duty really divided amongst our city schools. So he is in our schools a lot in Rathdrum, but he is not currently one of our SROs. We're hoping that he becomes one.
Okay. So he's helping our district out, but he's not under contract.
Correct.
Okay. And do we control where the SROs go, or like what schools they're in? Do we provide the input for that, or do they just do their thing?
No, they just kind of do their thing, and I love our relationships that we have with the 3 agencies with whom we work. They're very supportive of our schools. The county actually is going to provide some training for our staffs on citizen response. But the one downfall to the SRO is that they are a law enforcement officer at the same time as being a school resource officer. And we have definitely had times with both Spirit Lake and Rathdrum when there's a call that goes out, they have to respond. And so then our schools get left unattended. So that's, in my mind, that's the biggest benefit of the armed guard over the SRO, is that they truly are our employee full time, and we get to decide where they're going to be and how they're going to spend it.
Okay. And it says that they teach curriculum units of law, education, legal system, substance abuse, safe driving, sexual harassment, child abuse, crime awareness and prevention, safety, and community policing activities. Does that happen? I mean,
I would not say that they're teaching all of those things. They sometimes will help with, like safety schools, safety, and so they'll go into the elementary schools and they'll do like helmet safety kind of awareness type things.
Okay.
They will, if a health teacher asks them to come in and be like a guest speaker, they'll come in and talk about vaping and some of the health concerns that law enforcement is dealing with.
Some of that could have been remnants of the DARE program.
Yeah, and I don't know if Brian, but that he said some of that could be remnants of the DARE program. We actually have had today our mock DUI crash up at Timberlake High School, and Spirit Lake Police Department is actively involved in that, and the SRO participate in that. And so those are some of the kinds of things that they do.
Okay. Okay. Well,
They're definitely not going in teaching classes.
no, I didn't think they were heading a class, but the language was interesting. So I was like, huh, what are we doing? But
because that agreement, we have to rewrite it, so we can certainly clean up some of that. So
did we not enter into an agreement for this year?
I believe Brian started that process, and then COVID hit, and I'm not quite sure. Did we not finalize it?
Last I could see is I'd sent an email to Chief Sanchez last year, like in December, saying, oh, we need to update this agreement, where are we at? And I never heard back, and then when COVID hit, I just didn't follow up.
Okay.
But yeah, we definitely got to use the timeline of last year.
Yes, so as a result, Chair Thompson, while the board meeting was happening tonight, I actually put a reminder on my calendar for June, the last Monday of July, to set a meeting with Chief Sanchez and Brian and Dr. Meyer and myself to make sure we have the MOU in place.
Okay.
Anytime, I'm happy to work with the board on the language that's in there. If there's anything that you want us to change, we can certainly do that. And then our past practice has been whatever the language is in for one, so it's the same language for the other, as far as RAP and strictly.
Okay. Well, thank you for providing these. I mean, it's great to see.
You are very welcome. Any other questions?
So I'm sorry, so do we have any current SRO agreements in place right now with any of the, okay.
No, it sounds like the last one that we did was the 2019.
Okay.
So it is, and there's I think there's a, sorry.
I think that it says in there that if it doesn't, if nothing changes, it stays. I think she's asking, do we have an agreement? We do have an agreement right now, Spirit Lake.
Yes, but not an updated.
But I think it says in the wording, if I'm not mistaken, I think to say if nothing changes, it stays in place.
Yeah, I believe you're correct, or something to that effect.
I think she's asking if we're, because
yeah, we
are
definitely have an agreement in place. We are making those payments.
right. So I just think that's what she's asking. But
Okay.
I might be mistaken with that.
No, you're correct.
Are you?
Yep, you're correct.
I don't want her to think that we don't have that agreement. Sorry.
Yeah.
I misunderstood.
But for me personally, I think it's cleaner to make sure that we have one that's dated for the year, that
For sure.
so that you're aware of what it says. And
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
sure.
Yeah, because like this one, the reason I asked is because it references this section 1A above, but there's no A in section 1. So I was trying to find.
Well, when we sit down together and,
Yep.
and maybe during the policy committee, we could look at the MOU and make some recommendations.
Yeah. Yes. Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes the discussion items. Do we have any input for future agenda items?
Well, I had some future agenda items, but I'll probably just email them, but we started going along with some of the topics we covered tonight. You know, when I read the bus report and the committee word, because the district's grown so much, I'm just wondering if the board should entertain discussions on a policy committee that is made up of members of the community, the district, a board member kind of thing, a curriculum committee, and a budget committee. And I'm not sure, you know, the thing with that is getting commitment, sustained commitment. But I'm thinking that maybe this board should entertain creating some committees and see if we have interest.
Okay.
To maybe, you know, segment some of these major items and get some extra help and extra eyes. And but there again, like I say, I think part of it is just being able to sustain the commitment, but I still think we should have that discussion.
Okay.
Do we have plans to address the applicants for the clerk of the board position?
The document, it has a name. Dr. Meyer sent it to us. I don't recall. It's like a matrix document thing. That was sent to all of us. I did put all of the applicants' names, phone numbers, etc. in there. We were supposed to individually review all the applicants and slate them, categorize, you know, rate them, and then go from there. I think with the amount of activity we all had this last week for district business, it may be beneficial to set a time to have an executive session. If it can this be done in executive session, or is this a workshop? Becky, or Dr. Meyer, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's not, they're not hired personnel, so I think you have to have it in an open session.
Okay, in an open session.
Not a regular session or current personnel people.
Okay. Okay, so if we can, we might want to just set a time to get this done, because I don't think anyone has done anything beyond what I put on the spreadsheet. Does that sound okay, Trustee Major?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So we need a date for this. And I do know you have a very limited schedule during June. So when we pick the date, Trustee Major, if it's not a date that works for your schedule, would you feel comfortable in at least going through the applications individually on your own and giving your input?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, anything else for future agenda item or future input for future? Sorry.
For Council, Trustee Grissom was talking about the meeting next Tuesday. She earlier during the agenda had some thoughts, and I'm not sure if this, I'm not quite sure what if we're switching, but it sounded like for that IDB that maybe this would fit. I don't know if this clerk thing would fit in that same time frame or not.
Yep. So my idea was, if we're having a special board meeting on the 1st, if we're all going to be gathered here, if we should tackle a couple of these things, the IBB issue and maybe the clerk issue, or should we just deal with one issue? I mean, if we're all here, sometimes it's hard for us to all get together and have these conversations.
No, I hear what you're saying, and I understand that. I would say yes. I believe we are going to be tabling tonight's executive session and the action item to be moved to June 1st, which was to be the curriculum presentation. so that we can hold the executive session on June 1st. If we move the curriculum again, we could then hold the IBB and the clerk and do the executive session. I believe there would be sufficient time. But what do you, can you two weigh in on that?
Well, I guess we just have a crunch for time. We have all this stuff coming to a head that has to be done by July 1.
Correct.
You know, they all sort of, so I'm thinking that the sooner we have to look at the IBB and come to a consensus, we have to give HR Director Cunningham time and the staff time to get their
Correct.
contracts out and back. So I don't know how much further out we can push that, especially since we just gave a date of the 10th and the or 11th and the 20th or 21st. I'm thinking that we could do it all the first, the IBB, the clerk position, and then the executive session. I don't know about doing the curriculum at the same time.
I think if we
Okay.
go with the curriculum, it might be too much to try to do that night. And that is something that we all really value and want to make sure that we are giving that our all. And I think it would be a disservice to try to cram that into that meeting. That's just my opinion.
I agree. However, I do think there is significance in not pushing the curriculum out much farther. We do
I agree.
keep that on the calendar.
Okay. Well, maybe we just,
We need to give executive session its due time. We do need to give IBB its due time. And reviewing the clerk information its due time, as well as the curriculum presentation. That all, I mean, everything's requiring an abundant amount of time. And I don't mean abundant in a negative way. I just mean that it's time consuming.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think maybe we just push through then. I don't know what else we can do.
Are you here the 3rd? I forget what days you're out.
Let me get my phone. I believe so. Yes.
I got it written down too.
Do you have any input into the curriculum or?
June 3rd works.
Okay.
I have you the 3rd through the 6th.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be leaving that day, but I will have internet, so I can zoom in if you want me to. I could do that.
Okay.
Are you here the 7th? That's a Monday.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I am.
I would love to do it the 7th.
Does the 7th work for you, Ms. Sexton, for a curriculum? That's a Monday.
It does, because I have IBB on there.
I know, I see that. Yeah, okay, so why don't we move to the 7th and hope the other two are good for the 7th also for the curriculum.
Sorry, June's just my busy month.
Yep, nope, that's fine.
And just here's some, I'm gonna keep that IBB in case we need to come back together with the team. I'm just gonna keep it on the calendar. But
Sure.
if we double book it, I'm hoping we won't need it. So.
Yeah.
We're doing 5 to 8. Is that what we're doing?
Or whatever it was prior.
Okay.
For, yeah, the first is 5 to 8 as well. Okay, so I do believe, Chrissy, do I need a motion to table the executive session and the action items after executive session?
Yes.
Okay.
Can we do them all as a block? Okay. Are you ready, Madam Chair? Are you waiting or?
No, I am ready. I was just waiting.
Okay, I'll move that we table executive session 74-201-6B and D, personnel and the action item to June 1st.
I'll second that.
Hearing a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. And that concludes this meeting. So Ms. Grissom, if you can gavel us out. Thank you.